begin our Board of Supervisors meeting, May 3rd, 2011. It's about 7:05. We'll start with the salute to the flag, please. Mrs. Pullen, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Zupka?
Here.
Mrs. Kozlowski? Here. Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Snipes?
Here. Good evening, everybody. It's starting out this meeting on a very good note, well, actually, I should begin. I think it's appropriate, considering the award we're going to give out here, and we also have a Boy Scout, Cameron Owens, who is here working on his Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge, so he's here viewing the meeting. But I also think it's worthwhile at this point to make a couple comments in light of recent events. I had planned on starting tonight's meeting asking for a moment of silence for all those who suffered through the horrible tornadoes down south. But in light of events over the weekend, I think it's also appropriate, and considering the honor we're doing to one of our firefighters here this evening, I think it's appropriate also to remember those people who suffered through 9/11, including the 343 firefighters who died in New York, and all those obviously others who died in Western Pennsylvania and the Pentagon and in New York City itself. I remember all those members of the armed forces who are overseas and have been for quite a while. We certainly had some good news this weekend. The fight isn't over, but certainly it is looking very good. So if we can just have a moment of silence, remembering all those people who have been sacrificing and who have suffered so much. Okay, thank you. We're going to begin tonight's meeting with a recognition of a member of our community who has put in 50 years of service to our community. I know he's put in service in lots of places, but specifically 50 years at the Levittown Fire Company. And I have a proclamation here, which we are going to award to Mr. Orman. Acknowledgement of Tom Orman, Jr., May 2011. Whereas the Township of Falls is a second-class township located in the County of Bucks in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and whereas the Township of Falls is responsible for providing for the needs and safety of its residents, and whereas the Township of Falls recognizes and supports the invaluable service provided by its volunteer fire companies, and whereas it is the desire of the Township of Falls to recognize those among its citizens who show extraordinary dedication to the people of the Township of Falls, whose lives serve as an example to the rest of our community of the best we have to offer each other. And whereas Tom Orman, Jr. has, for 50 years, served as an active member of the Levittown Fire Company, number 1. And whereas Tom Orman, Jr., through his long and selfless efforts, has helped protect the people and property of the Township of Falls and has served as an inspiration not only to his family, friends, fellow firefighters, and neighbors, but to us all. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the Township of Falls does hereby issue this proclamation honoring the 50 years of volunteerism and unselfish service of Tom Orman, Jr. to the people of the Township of Falls, County of Bucks, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Where is Mrs. Ormond? Raise your hand, please. Mrs. Ormond.
Homer Simpson dies. No camera.
Okay, we can do that separately.
So, yeah, I'll tell you what. Good Irish boy. I guess that's it. We can sit down. Over here. There you go.
He started in that fire company right around the time I was in this.
By the way, there's no vetting going on here. No, this doesn't.
Do that or me?
No. It's a peat job there.
Okay, well, it's a great way to start the meeting this evening. We'll continue. Item number 1 on our agenda is a certificate of appropriateness for 26 Yardley Avenue involving replacement of asphalt shingles. Mr. Gray?
Yes, this is for 26 Yardley Avenue in Falsington. They are replacing existing asphalt shingles with new asphalt shingles. This has been approved by the HARB Board at its meeting held on March 31st, 2011. The name of the applicant is Sherry Putnam. At this time, the board is asked to consider this a certificate of appropriateness.
Okay. As you said, it was approved and approved unanimously. It's pretty straightforward. Any comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zipka?
None.
Mrs. Vislowski?
None?
Mr. Snipes?
Only that I see the roofer working on the house is going to be A. Brooks Construction. I know their work, and I think they'll do a fine job.
Okay. Mr. Dents?
No.
I have none either. I don't imagine there's any public comment needed. No? Is there a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness
So
for 26 Yardley Avenue? Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Okay, next item on the agenda is preliminary and final land development for Trench Tech Incorporated. Mr. Gray?
Yes, this is a preliminary and final land development for Trench Tech located at 1979 Bristol Pike, tax map parcel 13-40-046. This is a construction of a 6,000 square foot, one-story building addition.
Is the applicant here this evening?
I don't see them.
Don't see them?
Really?
They do know it's 7, maybe not 7:30?
I believe they do.
All right, well, I think this might be a first, Mr. Clark. Should we come back to this at a later time, you think?
I'm just checking to make sure that there is a notice to the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, I did notice at some point a letter in here that said that this would be continued until May 12th or something.
That was just when they had given us an extension.
Until.
And we had used that date, not that that was the date we were going to hear it, but we used that date because it gave us some flexibility. Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we simply pass over this item. If the applicant appears, we can let them go at a later time. If the applicant doesn't appear, since they're not here, and there is no further time left on this application,
We'd have to deny.
You'll have to take a vote to either deny it
Or pass.
or approve it.
Okay. All right. First time for everything. All right, we'll move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is consider adoption of the multi-municipal greenhouse gas emissions inventory and climate change action plan. Mr. Gray?
Yes, Falls Township has been working with Lower Makefield, Middletown, Lower Southampton, and Pendle Borough on a multi-municipal greenhouse gas emission inventory and climate change action plan. This project was initiated as part of a 2009 grant provided by the Pennsylvania DEP to the 5 municipalities. The grant was designed to assist municipalities in conducting emission inventories and developing action plans for reducing emissions in future years. Bradley Flam, professor from Temple University Center for Sustainable Communities, has been working with representatives of the participating communities and members of the respective EACs to meet the goals set by the DEP. The adoption of this plan is the last step that must occur to complete the grant project. The board is asked to consider adopting this plan at this time. In addition, Mr. Bradley Flam is here to discuss this item further.
Okay. Is it,
Pilot grant was approved 5.
is it Dr. Flam or Mr. Is it? I'll go with your title, whatever one you want.
My title is officially Professor Flam or Dr. Flam, but
Okay.
I'm very happy for people to call me Bradley, which is my first name. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I have brought copies of a short presentation.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
not going to go over it slide for slide, but I did want to give copies to you and your colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting me this evening. As Mr. Gray said, my name is Bradley Flam. I teach at the at Temple University's Ambler campus in Upper Dublin Township, Montgomery County, and I am a research fellow with Temple University Center for Sustainable Communities. I have been working for the better part of a year now on a project entitled the Multi-Municipal Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory and Climate Change Action Plan for Falls Township and 4 of your neighboring townships, Lower Makefield, Lower Southampton, Middletown, and Pendle. The purpose of the project was fourfold. It was to document greenhouse gas emissions from the 5 communities and specifically attributable to the 5 municipal governments, to look at the sources of those emissions, electricity, natural gas, motor fuels, and other sources, and also the sectors that are responsible, the residential sector, commercial, industrial, and so on. That was the first purpose. The second was to project these emissions into the future, 10, 15, 20 years into the future, to set emissions reduction goals for the year 2025, and to develop a climate change action plan, which is a set of recommendations to get to that emissions reduction goal. The completed 2-volume report has been digitally provided to each of the 5 communities. You should have copies at this point. Mm-hmm. We are having hard copies printed, but they're not ready yet, unfortunately. For anyone who is interested, we have posted copies of these reports to our website, the Center for Sustainable Communities, and the URL is on the back of the presentation I've given to you. And I have a few extra copies which I'll leave here if anyone else is interested in seeing a copy of that. I'm not going to take your time and go through point by point of the 2-volume report. I did want to just highlight a couple of things. There was in a participatory process with the 5 communities, with Ms. Rukoff here at Falls Township, other members of your staff, and volunteers with your Environmental Advisory Council, as well as in the other 4 communities, an effort to set a reduction goal. And the goal that was set as the objective is a 20% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions emissions by the year 2020. The Climate Change Action Plan has a set of 18 recommendations to help you achieve that goal. 8 of them are aimed at operations and facilities of the municipal governments, and 10 of them are aimed at the community as a whole. Some of the most important recommendations for the municipal government getting you about halfway towards a 20% reduction would be to replace older technology in your street lights in the 5 communities, the mercury vapor and high-pressure sodium lamps with LED lamps. And that would get you about a 10% reduction right there. There are several other recommendations which are in the report. For the community as a whole, there's a number of recommendations as well, encouraging energy retrofits and weatherization of homes and businesses in the community, encouraging the purchase of more fuel-efficient vehicles, and green power purchases. The 10 recommendations should enable you to get to that 20% reduction. There are also a number of recommendations in terms of organizing the effort within the 5 communities. Again, I won't go through each one of them, but one of the key ones is to continue collaborating the 5 communities amongst yourselves, and also with the Bucks County Planning Commission, the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, and other organizations which are helping communities throughout the Delaware Valley achieve greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And again, those details are in the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions I could about it, but I don't want to take any more of your time right now with presenting the findings of the report.
No, we appreciate your work. I think you've done an excellent job for introducing it and going over some of the highlights. I'll turn to board members and see if they have questions. We may have people from the public who might have questions as well. Mr. Zupka, comments or questions for Dr. Flam?
No, I have none.
Okay. Mrs. Wisłowski?
I have no questions, but thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, I'm not sure I saw in here the size of the grant that you are hoping to achieve to do the work.
The original grant, I don't have the precise figure. It, I believe, was about $60,000. The Temple University Center for Sustainable Communities received a smaller portion of that because the project was actually begun with another technical consultant, an organization called CMX, which unfortunately went bankrupt, and we came in halfway through the project to complete it.
Way to go. I was curious, this is coming from the DEP or another source?
The
grant?
DEP, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, provided the funding that has paid for the project.
So I know the DEP and Governor Corbett's budget has been slashed pretty heavily, so that you're sure that granting is still possible, I suppose.
Well, the funding for this project was actually 2 fiscal years ago,
Okay.
I believe, and has been fully dispersed.
Okay. Those are the only questions I have. I think it's a great project.
Mr. Dents?
No questions.
I had a couple, and I'll turn to Mr. Gray. In terms of the grant, this was 2008?
2008 that we initially met with the representative from CMX, August 2008.
Okay. And that was Ms. Thompson, correct?
Ms. Thompson,
Who did
yes.
that? All right. And in terms of, obviously, the entire thing's been paid for through the grant. Is that correct? In terms of the project, what CMX worked on, Dr. Flam worked on?
Yeah, at that time, CMX did work on some of it, yes.
Okay. All right. So this really hasn't, we're getting this information through the state, not through any cost to Falls Township. In terms of the emissions we have, and I apologize if I'm catching you sort of off guard in terms of specifics here, and I don't know how much you have in front of you. Where would you say, in terms of Falls Township, maybe if you know that specific, or maybe all 5 communities, where are most of the emissions coming from?
The municipal governments, their operations and facilities make up less than 1% of the total community emissions. Although it is important for the municipal governments to take a leadership role in reducing even that small quantity of emissions. For the community as a whole, most of the emissions are coming from 2 sectors. That is the residential sector, our homes, the way we heat them, the electricity we use, and transportation that begins or ends within the 5 communities. To combine, those make up about 2/3 of total emissions in the 5 communities. And so that's where your biggest opportunities for reductions lie. Commercial and industrial emissions together make up about 30% of emissions in the 5 communities.
Okay. I think I remember, if I remember seeing in the report when I was looking through it over the weekend, it's understandable considering the township we're in, or the situation we have here, we have a higher than normal, regarding all 5 communities, industrial output in terms of emissions, which obviously figures in when you think of the industries we have here compared to someplace like Lower Makefield or Pendel, which obviously doesn't have the industrial background. Okay, so we're looking at 2 things here.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more
sure,
question?
Go ahead.
And this is really for us. I did notice that it says, has been, Bradley Flam has been working with representatives participating in communities and members of their environmental advisory councils. Has there been any contact between our EAC and our EAC and you yet? And if not, can we give this to them?
They have been working with them already.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you've met, I guess, a few times with them?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
in several different forums. One was a multi-municipal EAC meeting in which the EAC in Middletown Township invited representatives of the 5 community EACs to attend. And we made a presentation there, and they, in fact, were involved in helping us set this 20% reduction goal.
Good. I hope they'll stay involved. Thank you.
Okay.
We hope so too.
And I had one more question, and I'll open up for public comment if there's any. Have you done work like this with other municipalities in the area, in Delaware Valley?
The Center for Sustainable Communities has worked with 4 communities in Delaware County, which have been doing a similar project with DEP funding as well. We've also worked with Montgomery Township in Montgomery County and Upper Dublin Township in Montgomery County. So we've done, worked with 11 communities at this point doing these types of inventories.
Okay, and would you know, just out of curiosity, where we fall in terms of our emissions compared to some of those other places?
The yardstick we've been using is looking at the Delaware Valley region as a whole. DVRPC, our Regional Transportation Planning Commission, for the 9 counties of 5 in Pennsylvania and 4 in New Jersey, conducted a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the region as a whole. Your 5 communities, on a per capita basis, have lower emissions than the region as a whole. Now, this is in part because of the much larger impact of industrial and commercial activities throughout the region. Of course, there are some communities like the city of Philadelphia that have much more industry than do your 5 communities. In the report, we do provide per capita emissions for each of the 5 communities. Falls Township is on the lower end of the 5 communities, but is not the lowest. I believe that's Pendel in terms of residential emissions. So you're not much lower than the regional average, but you are lower than the regional average.
Okay, so he's good to hear. Well, at least in this case, it's good to be below average.
It is. Exactly.
But,
and you're aiming to be even more below average as time goes on.
Right. And just looking at some of the recommendations that were made, very kind of common sense things. Some things we're already actually doing in terms of replacing some of our streetlights with LED lights. Buying equipment, for the township that's energy efficient in terms of things like copiers and refrigerators, things of that nature. So I appreciate your work. I don't know if there's any public comment. No, see no hands. Okay. So let's see, Mr. Gray or Mr. Clark here. We're looking at the inventory, greenhouse gas emissions inventory, as well as the climate change action plan. Can we adopt these at the same time?
I believe you can, yes.
Okay. All right, is there a motion then? And should have mentioned this first, I'm sorry. By adopting this, we're not, this isn't legally binding. Obviously, we're accepting the fact that this report has been done. We're taking this into consideration with the things we do, but obviously there are certain things in here, for example, that don't quite fit our neighborhood or our community. Certain recommendations that just we're not able to do, whereas a community like Pendel probably could because of things in terms of bicycling and things like that. We can do it in some parts, but not everywhere. So it doesn't bind us to anything, but it is obviously accepting the report and the action plan, and we're going to be taking it under advisement and things we do in the future. So with that being said, is there a motion then to accept the emissions inventory and the climate change action plan? Or adopt the inventory and climate change action plan.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wislowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Well, Dr. Flam, thank you very much.
Okay,
I appreciate
thank
all
you.
your efforts.
Thank you.
All right, I believe the representatives from Trench Tech are here. Okay. And so we'll look at item 2 here on our agenda, preliminary and final plan for Trench Tech. Mr. Gray?
Yes, this is for Trench Tech, located at 1979 Bristol Pike, tax map parcel 13-40-046. They are looking to construct a 6,000 square foot, one-story building addition. Tonight, representing the applicant is Mr. William Mafucci.
Mr. Mafucci's not here. My name is Charles Durkin. I'm with Durkin Associates. I'm the site engineer for the project.
Okay. All right, Mr. Durkin, what we're going to ask you to do basically is, and feel free to move around if you want to point to something, but you do have to take the microphone with you.
Sure.
But just give us an idea of what this plan is about, what's actually going to be happening here, and then if you can reference, there are a couple waivers you're requesting, so if you can just explain to us what those waivers are for and why you need them.
Yes. Basically, the plan is proposing a building addition to the existing Trench Tech property. Trench Tech moved into the property last spring. There was an existing between 6,000 and 7,000 square foot building on the property. It's an 18-acre site on Old Bristol Pike, which has been abandoned. I'll just point it out on the overall map. This is Old Bristol Pike, which is an abandoned roadway. The site is accessed via an easement out to Bristol Pike. What you see here, the brownish is the proposed building. Next to it is the existing building. The site is 18 acres, primarily in a gravel, which is used as a laydown area for Trench Tech designs and leases and will sell trenching systems. They're generally metal type sheeting and shoring systems for utility contractors generally. And what we're proposing to do is just add a 6,000 square foot building, which is approximately the size of a little smaller than the existing building. And generally, I think that's the project.
Okay. I see there are a couple of waivers, 3, I think, you're asking for.
Yeah, let me get my. The initial thing, talking to the zoning ordinance, we've originally the access easement which crossed Atlantic Precast property. When the property was surveyed, the actual roadway ended up outside what was the described easement by approximately 6 feet. So what we've done is we've moved that easement and created an easement agreement, which is being looked at now and will be submitted to the solicitor to make sure that it's okay with him.
Okay. I see that one of the waivers you're looking for is waiving the requirement of 15 feet of open space between a curb line and an uncovered parking area and the outside wall of a building.
Yeah, that's an existing condition. And on the bigger site plan, This is the existing building. This is the 9-foot existing grassy area. This is an existing parking area, and that's an existing condition that's been there since the building was built, and we're just asking for a waiver for that.
Okay.
Mr. Durkin,
Yes.
do you have another one of those maps?
Another
Have you
one
brought
of
an extra one?
You can use
Of these
mine.
drawings?
Mrs. Lasky, if you want to use mine, you're welcome.
Are you okay?
We're okay. I thought I left mine home. I may have it here.
Oh, yeah.
Vision impaired, and I can't see the fine print on your map. That's why I asked. Continue, please.
Sure.
Another waiver you're looking for is requirement of parking spaces to be 10 feet wide by 20 feet deep.
I have mine.
Okay. I think what you're providing is, I think it's about 10 feet wide, but it's like something 18 feet deep,
Yeah,
something like that?
10.7
Yeah.
by 18, and we're using typical parking spaces, generally 9 by 18, generally, and these were existing spaces that are there.
Okay. How many employees does Trench Tech have?
5 that are in the building.
5? Okay. All right. And I'm not sure how many visitors you might get.
They don't.
Right.
No.
Didn't think that would.
No, it's not a wholesale or retail establishment.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there
Yeah.
was some comment in here that that when the handicapped, that either the handicapped spot is blocked by other parking spaces or other parking spaces are blocked when the handicapped space is being used. That was coming from traffic planning and design, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, we redesigned the parking lot to get rid of that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's restriped, and then we added two additional parking spaces to take care of that.
Okay. And the last waiver you're looking for is requiring a minimum storm sewer pipe size of 15 feet. You're looking for, was it 10 maybe? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the pipe size. What it was, when we build a new building, which is the only construction, we were taking the roof drains and taking them into a stormwater infiltration bed. And rather than put a 15-inch concrete pipe, which isn't required by the size of the building that we're doing, it's more like, we view it more like plumbing, and a 10-inch PVC pipe can take a 100-year storm coming off the roof. So that's what we proposed.
And this is a roof drain we're talking about, not really a sewer pipe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I said that the ordinance I'm reading off of, or the resolution I'm reading off of, has a typo where it says 15 feet. And after I said it, I thought, boy, that's an awful big pipe. So
Yeah.
obviously inches.
Yeah.
Something clicked in my head. All right, so let's see. I'll go to board members and see if they have questions for you, and then we'll open up for public comment if there is any. Mr. Zivka, any questions for Mr. Durkin?
No, I have none.
Mrs. Vislowski?
No, Mr. Durkin, none.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, just one other question about water, and I did ask Mr. Sullivan this before our meeting started. It looked to me as, I guess it was in the soil erosion report, on the second page, it says the one-year return frequency storm will drain through the infiltration trench level spreader in 46 hours, which is more than 24 hours minimum required. And I was asking Mr. Sullivan if we get a couple of storm events one after the other, and this is not able to infiltrate quick enough, from what I'm reading, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, it's supposed to infiltrate in 24 hours, but it's actually going to take 46. Where will the flooding actually exit to, or what's the escape valve for flooding if the system can't handle the water infiltrating?
The site itself, what we do is we pick up the roof drainage and take it down into an infiltration trench, which is down in this grassy area.
Mm-hmm.
If it were to be overcome by a much heavier storm. This is a water-filled quarry to where it drains now. It's right next door to us. It's a former quarry that's filled with water.
And the quarry is still on the property of
It's on next door, Sylvie's property.
on Sylvie's property, okay. I just wonder if Sylvie is aware that they may be getting this flooding into their area if that's needed. I'm just being sensitive to what happens on a neighbor's property when
Oh,
development
yeah,
happens on one property.
generally the requirements are that they want you to detain it for 24 hours and let it go in less than 72,
Right.
which is what, we comply with that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Dents?
No, no questions.
Okay. Question I have for Mr. Sullivan regarding the storm sewer pipe size. Is there an issue with that with you?
There is not. As was stated, it's a roof drain, and we don't necessarily require the maximum or minimum pipe size of 15 inches for a roof drain. And just to be clear, there'll be no flooding on any adjacent properties because of this project. I don't know if that was
Okay. All right.
No.
clear.
Yeah, thank you. for
There's
clarifying.
actually a wooded area just below the infiltration trench that's still on their property. And this will have no kind of flooding or adverse impact on the adjacent property.
Okay.
The pre- and post-development runoff is not increased.
Mr. Sullivan, I looked at the topography study, and I'm wondering if you have any problem with it. It's an unusual piece of land. And are you satisfied with the feasibility of the drainage?
Yes, we are.
You really are?
Yes.
Okay. With all the flooding and stuff going on and everything else happening with the weather all around the world, I get a little apprehensive when I see something like this being developed.
Right, well, the addition is actually being built on existing crushed gravel, which is virtually impervious surface anyway, so there's no increase in runoff in this property.
We don't travel very often, you know. Sometimes I take that shortcut down there, but there's a detour and everything, so, thank you.
And regarding the easement of the driveway coming in, is there any problem with that, with you or Mr. Clark?
No, I think that'll be part of, the easement will need to be produced as part of the record plan, so it's no problem that it hasn't been obtained as of yet.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman, was there
Yeah.
one other question regarding the turning radius in the driveways? Did we already go over that?
No,
Was it coming from traffic planning and design or from the fire marshal?
I think it was traffic planning, because I'm looking at I have the fire marshal's letter here, and his concern is more about once there is a building plans, he wants to take a look at the building plans, but obviously they're not ready for that yet. So, but are you familiar with the turning radius issue?
Yeah. What we did, a question was brought up, so we contacted the fire marshal and got his fire truck, and you'll see on, I think it's sheet 6 of the plans, that we actually created the turning radiuses for the fire truck, and it has no problem getting in and out of there. And we put a, what we call a WB50 truck, which is the biggest that comes in there. It's a 50-foot long tractor trailer, and adjusted the radiuses to accommodate that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Durkin, I think that Sylvie is the adjacent property, and has he weighed in on this? Is he concerned at all about the drainage?
No, not to my knowledge, and we're not impacting his property at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, is any public comment needed? I see no hands. All right, then this would be Resolution 11-10,
10.
which would be preliminary and final land development for Trench Tech Incorporated. Accepting the waivers is granted, making that minor little typo fix on the back so that you have a 15 or a 10-inch pipe, not a 10-foot pipe. So you have to dig a little bit of a trench for that, I think. So is there a motion, or what's the pleasure of the board regarding Resolution 11-10?
make a motion to
No, go ahead.
adopt resolution number 2011-10.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
A second made by Mr. Zupka. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wisłowski?
I'm going to abstain. I still have apprehensions about drainage, and I don't know why we need to do preliminary and final on the same night, because if we only adopted the preliminary, then it would make more sense to schedule the final for another meeting, our next meeting, and it would give us a chance to know exactly what the abutting property owners feel about this, and I would make it my business to go down there and talk to them.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Durkee.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, item 4 on our agenda. Well, 4 and 5 are sort of going to have the same presenter, I'm assuming. Mr. Gray?
Yes, thank you. On April 14, 2011, Township representatives opened sealed bids for the police vehicle retrofitting. One bid was received. This bid was from Havis, located in Warminster, PA. The amount of the bid for the retrofitting of the 5 vehicles was $25,282.52. The board is asked to consider awarding the bid to Havis in the amount of $25,282.52 for the retrofitting of the 5 vehicles. In addition, Corporal Mark Bertone is here tonight to answer any questions the board may have.
Good evening, Corporal. Just give us an idea in terms of what's our money going for here.
Well, we have 5 new vehicles we purchased, 2 new Tahoes and 3 Crown Victorias. Crown Victorias are going to have their equipment recycled. We're going to take 3 vehicles out of service. We're going to remove the equipment from them and reinstall it in the new cars. The 2 new Tahoes are going to get complete new equipment.
Okay. All right.
Mark, I don't think your mic is on. Test it.
Might be a little, is it on, or? It might have just been that it was up a little bit. I don't know if you were. No, it's on.
Now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's a pretty straightforward, issue, and Havis we've used before, correct?
Yes, we've used it for years.
Okay, and we're satisfied with their work?
Very satisfied.
Okay. And Warminster, obviously, they're close enough that if something goes wrong, we can get, it's not, Connecticut or
Yeah,
something.
that was a main concern.
Okay.
Not that anything's going to go wrong.
Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupka?
Just a comment. Havis, which it used to be known as Havis Shield or Havis Shields, they're probably the first one in Pennsylvania that was completely certified to do hand controls, and they go back into the late 40s where they outfitted ambulances and all types of emergency vehicles. Their quality, it seems strange that they're the only ones that sent or bidded on it, but their quality, and they've been around as far as I know since 1948, not in the same location, but their quality is excellent. So we should have no problem at all with them.
If you look at some of the quotes that we got for equipment over the years, you'll notice that some of it, a good portion of the equipment that other people use is actually made by Havis.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going right to the source. The quality of the workmanship is, the quality of their equipment and the workmanship is we've never had a problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Wisłowski?
Well, Mark, you found your place because you're best at what you do.
Thank you.
And I watched you grow in this department, and I'm real proud of you. And I know you're going to shoot me if I don't make the motion to approve this, so I'm going to take care of myself.
Thank you.
Mr. Snipes, comments or questions?
No questions.
Mr. Dents?
None.
Any board, public comment needed? I see no hands. All right, then, Mrs. Wisłowski, I understand you're making a motion
I
to
certainly am.
purchase from Havis, or accept the bid from Havis for $25,282.52. That is your motion?
It is.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wisłowski?
I'm voting twice. 2 yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, and as residents will probably be aware, the township was extremely fortunate several weeks ago. There was a very bad accident involving one of our officers who thankfully came out in good shape. The vehicle, not so much. And so, and so we're looking now to replace that vehicle. So if you can give us an idea, Corporal, about what the process is and how we went about getting this vehicle.
Well, what we did was, I went to our usual vendor, Hondru Fleet, out in Mannheim, who is a CoStar's vendor, who's treated us very well over the years. We're trying to use, they've been very, very accommodating. I wanted to get another Crown Victoria to match the ones that we have. Unfortunately, getting a black and white now, being that this is the last year for Crown Victorias, was kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Fortunately enough for me, or for us, there was an order that was canceled. They had 3 Crown Victorias on the ground at Hondru. Unfortunately, they weren't painted black and white. So they gave us a price originally of $24,980 for that vehicle under the CoStar's price. I was able to get them to knock off about $1,000 and paint it. So we got it for a couple of bucks more than what we paid for the last ones.
Okay.
So that'll take about 2 weeks for them to paint it, and then it will be delivered to Havas.
Okay.
And they will do the upfit.
All right. I think, are we able to salvage some of the equipment from the old vehicle for this one?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Give or take a couple of bulbs, something like that. 99% of the equipment in that vehicle will be recycled.
All right, good. Good. I wasn't sure how. I knew the car was pretty banged up. I wasn't sure if the equipment was as well.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question for Corporal Bertone. Do you ever solicit business or painting from Mako in Trenton? He lives in Falls Township on West Trenton Avenue. He's most reasonable, and he's the largest Mako place in the United States. He's a fine person. I had a car painted by him, and why not put him on your list to solicit work? His name is Palmer, and Matthew Palmer, and he lives on West Trenton Avenue, and he's in Ewing.
We do use Mako, but I like to keep it kind of in the state and kind of in the area.
Okay.
So I use the Mako on Route 13, and they've been very good to us. They've done a fine job. I don't know if you've noticed a few of the cars that we've had, a few of the recycled police cars that we've had, that we've painted for administration and school cars and things like that. They've been very, very responsive to our needs, and they've done a fine job for us. And like I said, I like to keep things kind of close to home.
Well, he's close to home. He lives here.
Yeah, we got to pay a toll to get over there.
When you get back, they let you in for free.
You're cutting it that close, are you?
Trying to get out.
I got it.
Mr. Gray, in terms of, we're getting some insurance money for this vehicle, right?
Yes, we did. We received $13,770
Okay.
for the old Crown Victoria.
All right, $13,700. So it's about $10,200 basically out of our pocket, I guess, is what we're looking at.
Yes.
Okay. And the vehicle that was totaled, how old was the vehicle that was totaled? Do you know?
It's about a year old.
A year. How many miles on it?
49.
49,000.
A little under
It's a year.
50,000, I believe.
1 year old.
Yep, about a year old.
But about 49,000 miles. Okay.
Right.
All right.
There's going to be, to upfit, it's going to be, we have the equipment, we're going to put it in the back seat and ship it up to Havas with the rest of them.
Okay.
And let them reinstall.
Okay.
You can have your car. I want to make this motion, too.
I just don't, I'd like to have everything in place.
Sure.
Like we have, if I was to send a car up to Havas today, and I would say to them, do our package, they would know exactly what goes into my cars, or our cars, and yeah, it'd be taken care of. There would be no questions. Going down to the actual sequence of the light bars and how the strobes work and everything else, and the actual, the way the light switches are laid out, all that stuff it's templated, and so it works out well for us.
Okay, great. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zipka?
No, I have none.
Mrs. Wisłowski?
No.
Mr. Snipes?
No.
Mr. Dents?
Nope.
I have none. Any public comment needed? See no hands. All right, is there a motion then to, or Mrs. Wisłowski, you're making a motion to purchase from Hondru Fleet the Crown Victoria in the amount of $23,980.
I have to make the motion. You spent so much time practicing in my court.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Pulaski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Corporal. Appreciate it.
No problem, folks. Take care.
Good night.
Okay, next item on our agenda is consider awarding a bid for the boat ramp kiosk. Mr. Gray.
Yes, 2 bids were submitted to Falls Township and publicly opened on April 29, 2011 for a parking pay station. The 2 quotes were from, the first one was from Precision Technology with a base bid of $17,605 and an alternate number 1 bid, $1,504. Second bidder was Richard N. Best Associates, $24,020 with an alternate of $1,820. Based on the bid evaluation, Precision Technology Solutions is the lowest responsible bidder for the project. T&M is recommending the Board of Supervisors authorize the engineer's office to issue a notice of intent to Precision Technology for the bid cost of $19,109. That's the base bid plus alternate number 1. The board is asked to consider issuing this notice of intent to Precision.
Okay, and alternate number 1 for those out in the public. Alternate number 1 is basically to make this kiosk solar powered. So it would be able to power itself for the most part. And the kiosk would be used by people going down to put their boats in. You'd be able to just get a ticket right there rather than having to come to the township building and then kind of go back down to the boat ramp. You'd be able just to get a day pass right there at that kiosk. So it's much more convenient, very similar to what you see happening in a lot of parking areas in cities. I know there's one over by the Trenton train station. There's several in Philadelphia where you just have a kiosk there. You don't have anybody actually have to go pay money to. It's just a kiosk and you get a ticket and you put it there. Comments or questions from board members and I guess we'd be directing these toward Mr. Sullivan or Mr. Gray. Mr. Zupka?
No, I have none.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm wondering about this piece of equipment and where it's stationed. It's kind of out of the, out of the limelight. Hey, we'll find somebody who can fix my microphone. Kind of out of the limelight, and I'm wondering about, damage or vandalism or those kinds of things. This is a pretty expensive piece of equipment. How will we handle that? Will this be insured or?
Well, they're going to be insured. I know we're also having video cameras surveillance put in, Mr.
Yes, we'll have video cameras down there. It will be an insurable item in the township's insurance policy, so we should be covered.
I was remembering some of the SEPTA automatic ticket purchase machines that were removed from our suburban stations because they were just vandalized too many times. So hopefully that won't be the case. I'm trusting it won't be, but I wanted to make sure that we're covered for that. So, okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Dents?
No, no questions.
Okay, and I have none. Comments or questions from the public? See no hands. All right, then, is there a motion to award the bid for the boat ramp kiosk base bid plus alternate 1 to Precision Technology Solutions in the amount of $19,109?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
No.
Pulaski?
No.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, items 7, 8, 9 are all amendments to our codes. 2 are zoning, and 1 is regarding sidewalks. Just looking at the public, I have a feeling that there are some people here to talk about item 9, not so much 7 and 8, which are more straightforward. And so with the permission of the board, I guess, is it okay if we do item 9 first? We'll take a look, and I know Mr. Bennett is here. Mr. Gray, do you want to introduce, we'll look at item 9 first?
Yes, item 9, this is consideration of adoption of the code amendment to Chapter 209-7, rezoning certain tax map parcels from low, medium density residential to medium, high density residential. This was authorized for advertisement by the board on March 15th. It was advertised April 20th and April 24th, At this time, the board is asked to consider this amendment.
Okay. Mr. Bennett, would you mind, just this zoning change affects the area that is, Nottingham, basically, Village of Nottingham, which is actually where Mr. Bennett lives and where I live. So just give us an idea of what this zoning change is about.
A couple years ago, they formed a committee to go over the zoning, to create a new zoning code and make a lot of changes. And they made a lot of changes, and I'm not sure why, but I believe because there are some very large lots at the top of, towards Lower Marsville Road, Village of Nottingham, that they didn't want overbuilt. So they decreased the building coverage down to 8%, which creates a hardship because now nobody can even put a porch on, a deck, a shed. They can't do nothing. Part of Village of Nottingham, where you live, and there's another street, are already zoned MHR. So they felt it best that we just make the whole development one zoning designation so that it's equal and people can improve their properties if they need to.
Yeah. And I know that we have had, because you and I have been dealing with some people that have been trying to do some things, the relatively basic things, that they've been running into serious zoning problems because of this change that was made a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and then they have to go to the zoning hearing board. Usually, they have to wait a month because it has to be advertised. They have to go to the zoning hearing board. They get approved because zoning hearing board kind of knows the 8% is wrong. And then they have to wait 30 days for the appeal period, and so it adds 2 or 3 months to their project.
Right. Okay.
So,
Is it, what was the zoning, I guess, maybe for this district before that change was made a couple of years ago? Was it more sort of consistent with what we're trying to do?
yeah, LMR was 30% building coverage, and impervious surface was 40%. So it was 30 and 40%. It would go to 30 and 45%.
Okay.
So it would be a 5% increase in impervious, but the building coverage would stay the same as what it used to be.
And what is it now, Mr. Bennett?
Right now, it is 8% building coverage and 25% impervious surface.
Okay.
And 8% is, like you told me, less than what the houses actually are.
The houses right now, I would average them out to say they're around 11 to 15% coverage. So if you want to add a pebble to your land, you're going to be over.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right, comments or questions from board members, and we'll open up to the public. Mr. Zupko?
No.
Mrs. Wisłowski?
Makes sense to me, Tom.
Mr. Snipes?
Does make sense, yes.
Mr. Dents?
No, me and Mr. Bennett have spoke about it, and it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I do know I've gotten quite a few comments and questions. Just even yesterday walking my dog, I've had people stop and ask me, "What's the zoning thing? What's going on?" And I do know that there is a concern. I guess people have, including Mr. Binney from the Planning Commission, who raised a very good point. He of course knows what he's talking about with this issue, about the possibility that someone could build a duplex on one of these properties. I guess even under the old ordinance, though, they could have done that. Is that correct, or?
Under the old ordinance, under MHR, they could have. Your particular street and the other one that's already MHR and all of Pennsbury Woods right now is zoned that way that they could do that if they have 8,000 square foot of property.
Right. Okay. And obviously for 30 years, nobody's really done that. So
Nobody's done it
I guess
yet.
that was our concern. But I guess one of the things I was talking to Mr. Binney was if that is a concern, obviously I think we could go back certainly and make some adjustments to this to restrict that possibility. My personal concern is that there are people already who have been sort of held up by this, and I'd prefer just passing this now so that it eliminates that problem. And then if we need to go back and tinker a little bit, I don't think there's going to be a rush of people to knock down their homes and build duplexes in Nottingham.
Yeah, and we could tweak this a little bit and make it a little bit better. The big thing right now is that we're doing a map amendment, which is way more detailed than a
Simple
code
change.
amendment.
Right. Okay. Okay. Right. Those are my questions. Public comment. See a few hands. Okay. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, sir. You have to come to the microphone, please. Sorry.
Russ Conklin, Nottingham. I understand what you're talking about as far as minimum coverage and everything else, but unfortunately, as I'm looking at the difference between them, I see a big difference between the front yard, the side yard, the accessory building and everything. So you're worried about 2 items, but you're opening everything else up. I can't say that I would be really pleased if you put in these new zoning and someone decides next door to me now to suddenly build a huge addition and put it right up against my property. How are we addressing that?
Okay. Mr. Bennett, in terms of the setbacks Mr. Conklin's referring to, can you address that?
Yes. Front yard, well, front yard's 40 feet. It would be 25 feet. The side yard is presently 20 feet, would be changed to 10 feet. The rear yard was 50, would be changed to 30 feet.
And this is from
From the
property line?
property line.
Property line, okay. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. All right, Mr. Con, I mean, I hear you. I understand your concern.
Again, I'm not pleased with that, and if someone has to, they're looking to make an addition or something right now, and they have to go through a couple of months. I'm sorry they got to go through a couple of months, but someone now builds a house 10 feet from the property line. You're saying, well, down the road, we'll look at this. Once they get the permit, once they build it, you can't get them to tear it down. You've made that a judgment. There's no going back. You can go ahead and change it later, but these people are all going to be grandfathered in. What will this do to the property values of the people that are there now? Has any study been done on that? What will it cost me if suddenly now all those lots are crammed in?
Well, understand the zoning that we're changing it to, part of Nottingham is already that zoning district. And so within the same community. So in terms of property values, there isn't going to be that much of a discrepancy from one end to
You
a
guarantee me that?
couple streets away.
Can you guarantee me
I
that?
can't guarantee a whole lot of anything, Mr. Conklin, unfortunately. I wish I could. But certainly, I mean,
Can you guarantee
it's
that my
different.
neighbor suddenly isn't going to add an addition and bring it to 10 feet from the property line?
If he can or she can do that in the span of time it might take us to make some of the adjustments to this, like the ones you're making, I think are good ones that we can certainly look at. I don't know how quickly they're going to be able to do that.
Well, couldn't you make the other adjustments first before you go ahead and make this zoning change?
I would, like I said, I would rather not, simply because the big problem that's hitting people right now is the impervious and the building coverage. That's the problem that's hitting a lot of people. It's not so much expanding to the sides or back or front.
But they can go get a variance right now, can't they?
They can.
Then what's the problem?
Well, they can get a variance from building to the side yard too.
Yes,
it's either one.
But then you'd have to notify me, and I would get to fight the variance,
They'd
wouldn't
have to
I?
notify you either way.
Mr. Conklin, I think you make a valid point. You know, I like seeing things tidy and even, but I didn't realize there was such a difference in the setbacks until Mr. Bennett just recited them. I would like to make a motion to table this for 1 month and have the board members that are interested take a second look at it.
I'll second that.
Good. Have the secretary record it.
I'll second that. I think we have to look at the setbacks that are going to go along with this, so we don't immediately start other problems.
Mr. Bennett, I'm going to be coming to talk to you, okay? Thank you.
All right, motion has been made to table this ordinance. Motion to table takes precedence. There is no debate on a motion to table. Mrs. Pullen, can you pull the board on the motion to table?
Mr. Zopka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wislowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
No.
Mr. Dents?
No.
Mr. Snipes?
No.
Okay.
But I am interested in discussing this more.
I do. But I want to hear some more people too. If we table this, we don't hear any more discussion. So I'd like to hear. I know there was at least one other person who wanted to speak.
Hello, Kim McCauley, Nottingham Drive. You had mentioned that the zoning was changed a while back. Can someone elaborate on that? When was that done?
When was that?
I believe it was done when the development behind us went in.
Say
No,
again,
that was
when
after
did it
that.
change?
I believe it was December of 2008. No, it wasn't when the development went in.
Yeah,
This is when they adopted a whole new zoning code.
right.
And when they did that, there was an oversight on, that's how that's how this came up. There was an oversight, and then I only realized it by people.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, can you use the microphone? Sorry.
When somebody comes in and they want to put a shed or.
Could you take the mic out? It's not been playing as loud
Okay,
tonight.
all right. If somebody wants to put a shed in, or a small front porch, or even a small deck, I have to deny them because the book says they're not allowed to do it, and then they have to go to the zoning hearing board. And it's a big delay, and it has created a lot of problems, and we discussed doing this, and then we have to tweak some numbers. We'll tweak some numbers to make it better we want to get it as close to what it used to be as what it was, as soon as we can. That's the problem.
And you'll share with what it used to be? Is that what's on the chart that you sent out?
I'm sorry, Ms. McCall, you got to use the microphone. I apologize.
I can give you a copy of
Okay,
that.
I'd like to understand what it used to be.
Okay.
And then secondly, the front of the development, from what I understand, they are zoned as NCR. Those individuals did not receive a letter that their zoning would be changing as well. So if we're trying to be,
Mr. Bennett,
Being changed.
they're not
why
being
are they
changed.
not being changed? Why are they different than we are? And we're still in
You're
the same
talking about
development.
the homes that are right on, like Tiber and
Franklin, Martha, part of Taylor, Sherwood.
The older part of Martha Drive down the end, and the
Right.
older part of Taylor and Sherwood.
Right.
They're zoned NCR, so they are not being changed.
They weren't changed to begin with. They weren't, like, your zoning area was actually changed mistakenly. And so what we're trying to do is get it back closer to what it was before. They were looking, when you come down Lower Marsville Road, there's all the area off to your right where there's a whole lot of trees, basically. A lot of that property is actually, some of it's owned by us, the township. But they're very big lots. And the idea was to change those lots, those sizes, so that you couldn't have somebody go in there and put in, like, things like duplexes or things like that. And mistakenly, when they made that change, it applied to pretty much a huge part of Nottingham. And so what we're trying to do is sort of isolate it now so that the area they wanted to change really was changed. And what Mr. Bennett thought would be a good idea, and I agreed with him, was to try and make Nottingham, a little bit more sort of contiguous, a little bit more uniform. The area that's closer up to the front, like you're talking about, the older homes, usually the one-story, the brick homes, they were always the same district. They were never changed. Their district wasn't changed, so there's really no reason to change them back. Different style of home, much they're older homes, obviously, as you know. And so that was kind of the thinking with this.
Okay, so it was changed in 2008?
Yeah,
I
it had
put-
no relation to the houses behind us, and there's no
Okay.
connection to that.
I had put an addition on, and I had to go through the variance process, so I think what I'm hearing is what I applied for, I really didn't need to do. If there was some
When
kind of zoning
was-
change. I'll get the
Did you
dates
do
and
your
Yeah, when was the date?
I'll get the exact dates.
Okay.
Because I did have to go through that process.
okay.
I did have to go through the variance, so I'm hearing a little bit of double jeopardy here, if you will.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and I look
Understood.
forward to working with someone so that we can,
Yeah, we'll try and get that resolved if that's the case.
Yeah, call me
Okay.
anytime. That's
Okay,
why-
I have your
that's why
email.
That's why I set my number.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Other comments or questions? Seeing no hands. Oh, one more.
Hi, Gail Shulsky. I live on Martha Drive. I'm the last house right before all the
Right.
woods there. And one of the things that you had addressed was impervious coverage. That's a big concern to me because I have that creek that runs behind my property.
Yeah, okay.
Can't hear me?
You're speaking softly.
The creek that runs behind my property and the woods that are next to me seem to bring a lot of water in, and if the impervious coverage is changed, that's going to have a big effect on not only my own home, but some of my neighbors as well that are real close to that area. So impervious coverage, is that something that you're going to have to tweak the numbers of?
Yeah, we do know that there is water problems over there in some areas, and so that's something we'll definitely look at.
Martha Drive is the retention basin in your backyards. Am I correct, or am I
She's at the other end. by the
misstating it?
woods.
You're
She's
the
all
other
way down
end.
at the end.
Okay.
I have all the stink bugs.
Bugs are everywhere.
Okay.
We all have that.
Thank you, Ms. Shulsky.
Any questions, call.
Right, thank you.
Okay. And what was that? I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett. Refresh my memory. The old impervious to what it's going to be now?
The old impervious was 40%, and it would go to 45%.
45, okay. Okay. All right. Any other public comment? See one more hand, sir?
She doesn't like it, that's great. But you sent that an email before. I don't think I saw that. It's you weren't copied.
Scott's here in Martha Drive. I'm actually Gail's neighbor. I'm actually the lowest lying property on that. And as of right now, since you guys put Fallsington Woods in, the stream that comes underneath of Lower Marsville comes behind Fallsington Woods that those drain into, come across into my backyard. I have not been able to mow my lawn yet this year. You walk in my backyard right now, it's a swamp. My concern with the more impervious surfaces, I'm going to be getting more water back there. And it's just out of hand. I mean, when you guys did that, you didn't do anything with the stream. The drainage basin they put in is physically on the other side of the stream. That, when you go back there when it rains, is almost perfectly dry. So this is my concern with the impervious surfaces. I mean, you guys are giving us more and more water. I know there's a couple neighbors that aren't here. Their bilge pumps didn't run before. Now they're running almost 24/7. So, I mean, I know we've had a lot of issues in that since that new development, and more impervious in the section. I think that's going to be issues.
Okay.
And I mean, I know the house, 3 houses down from me burnt down, I think it was a year and a half ago.
Probably.
They have their permits, they got their variances, they're doing additions. I think we should leave it the same way. You got to go for your variances, and if your neighbors agree with you, you're good. If your neighbors don't, then so be it.
Okay. All right.
All right,
Okay,
thank you
thank
very much.
Mr. Bennett, do we have other applications at present time pending for Nottingham and this particular tract of land?
No, not right now. While there are people that are holding off, waiting, and hoping,
That this gets changed.
you know, with
What is the,
sheds and stuff like that.
what's the harm to delay for 1 month?
I don't know if we would have to re-advertise, repost.
If we continue to a date certain, we wouldn't have to re-advertise.
Okay, I'm not sure of that because it had to be advertised. I had to notify all the homeowners and we had to post the tract.
It would have to be re-advertised, reposted.
No, it would not.
No, it wouldn't.
It's a significant change.
No.
Agrees with me.
We're delaying to study.
No, since it was advertised and since the property was posted and everyone who had notice that it was going to be heard tonight, everyone who wants to be heard on the issue presumably received notice that it is being heard tonight. And if you continue it to a date certain, those who have an interest, those who were received notice would be aware that it is being continued to a date certain. If you are going to hold it off for 3 or 4 months, then I would recommend that you re-advertise it. If you hold it off to one of your meetings in June or your second meeting in May, I don't believe that it needs to be re-advertised.
What if there are changes? For example,
If there are changes, if there are substantial amendments to the ordinance, then it will need to be re-advertised.
right, so if we say to Mr. Bennett, change to a 40% impervious, change the setbacks to match the old, that kind of thing.
That's a substantial amendment that will require re-advertising, will require resubmission to the Bucks County Planning Commission, and will require resubmission to the Falls Township Planning Commission.
No one has the authorization to say to Mr. Bennett, change 40 to 30 or anything. And if we make the change at a legally continued to a date certain meeting, then we're legal if we change it at that date certain. Are we not?
No. If it is a substantial amendment, then it needs to be re-advertised.
We don't know what kind of a substantial amendment there may be. We may decide to leave it alone
Correct. So you can continue this to a date certain.
without any penalty.
But at that time, if you make any substantial changes or amendments, then it needs to be
You
re-advertised.
can't act on it.
That's correct.
So
If we didn't act on it tonight, we would be in the same boat, Mr. Clark. They haven't changed the law that much, that we have to be bound by something that I don't agree with. It has been ever thus. When you go to a date certain, the board takes action at a public meeting.
Kozlowski, I'm agreeing with you.
Well, then don't make it look like we're doing something that's going to require re-advertising, because we have the option of each of us, if we chose, to go down there and look and decide for ourselves and bring back to the next public meeting without private conversations, which take place too often here, and do our business here in a public forum. And I see no problem with that, since there's nothing pending now that would cause us to not wish to delay 1 month and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Is there any other public comment needed? All right, motion to close public comment.
Still moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. If I'm hearing Mr. Clark correctly, and I think I am, the issue is not delaying it to a date certain. The issue is, if you would delay it to a date certain, it can stay as is, you come back, and you don't have to repost, you don't have to re-advertise, you don't have to do anything else. But if at that meeting, let's say it's in 2 weeks, let's say it's in a month, let's say it's in 6 weeks, if you're going to make changes, significant changes, which changing the setbacks, changing the impervious would be, then you can't act at all. You have to re-advertise. You have to go back out. You have to resubmit it to the Bucks County Planning Commission. You have to resubmit it to our Planning Commission, and you're adding on, obviously, significant time. That's, Mr. Clark, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So there is a difference between continuing to a date certain and then continuing and then making changes.
We
There's a
could
difference.
decide to leave it as is. That's just a boogeyman being trotted in front of the public right now. I don't agree with it, and I see no harm. The problem in this township, as we move too fast because we don't know what we're doing, and 3 votes over there just jam it through. The proof of that was the bidding for the cutting of the grass and caring for our parks and mulching and all that took place at last month. And that was a fiasco. That was supposed to be a quick change. We had a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. It got done, and it got done wrong. And what I'd like to prevent is having other residents coming in here and being real dissatisfied with what we've done to them, when a delay of 1 month hurts nothing. It lets us become better informed. But you have 3 votes. Do what you want to do.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something? I understand the arguments of people this evening in terms of the impact on their properties if we make the change without doing the changes to the ordinance to the zoning that we want to make. I also understand the concerns of people that have had to jump through hoops in this neighborhood that they don't have to in other places because of having to go to the variance, having to get a variance, et cetera. Hopefully they would be willing to wait while we really do this right. I don't know if there are people that you could communicate with specifically to let them know we are working on it, we do intend to make changes, but there are some things that we need to get right. So I'm in agreement to, if we put this off to a future meeting, but very soon, within 2 weeks or.
Well, the concern is, obviously, my thoughts, and I understand what you're saying, and I understand the concerns of the residents too. My concern is, I'd like to see this approved tonight. What I was going to do is actually ask Mr. Bennett to start working immediately with Mr. Clark's office on making changes to the impervious, to the setback requirements, so that we could approve that as fast as we could. As Mr. Bennett said, this change that we're doing tonight is actually a pretty detailed change and much harder to do.
And I also think we should address the duplex issue.
Yeah, right.
Along with that. I've already started looking into that and to make changes for that, because I don't want a duplex next to my house, as I'm sure you don't either.
Right. So I think the difference, what we're looking at is, the time, in terms of time period. What would it take, Mr. Clark, what would it take in terms of time if we had to re-advertise the entire thing, if we had to go back out, go back to the Bucks County Planning Commission, go back out to Falls Township Planning Commission, re-advertise, repost, et cetera?
Once it goes to the planning commissions, once it is sent to the planning commissions, we can't act on it for a minimum of 30 days. They have 30 days to review it. So if you are going to make, as I said, substantial amendments, it needs to go back to the planning commissions, and then the advertising requirement would be no less than 30 days, no more than 60 days. So you would have that window after you get it back from the Planning Commission. If you were to make these changes at your meeting on the 18th of this month, or 17th of this month, you would then send it out to the Planning Commission. So the earliest you could get this in would be during one of your, either your late June meeting or your early July meeting.
If we made those changes to this.
Correct.
Right. Now versus, let's say we approve this evening as is, and we start immediately working on the adjustments that we've been talking about with duplexes, setbacks, and impervious. What's the time frame in terms of that?
Your timetable then becomes, once you have additional ordinance amendments, that needs to be sent to the Planning Commission, and then that 60-day time clock starts running again.
So it's virtually the same?
For the most part, yes. If you know what changes you're going.
Excuse me.
If you know what changes you're going to make now, you're talking about essentially the same time period.
Okay. All right.
I can answer that lady in the back. Excuse me, sir, okay? I do want to hear what you have to say. It looks to me like we're doing what we do when we make mistakes up here. The cart gets put ahead of the horse. If there was a public discussion announcing that there were going to be talk of changing zoning in Nottingham Village without any specificity, just putting it on the agenda for discussion, that would bring the people out. When you have it all defined, and people, I'm a board member, I don't know what those definitions are. I got them tonight. But if I had been party to a discussion about what to do down there, the first thing I would have done was take a ride, talk to residents, and then come to that open public meeting and discuss with the residents who are affected what we were contemplating doing. That night, at that meeting, we could then put together something that makes common sense. But I found in this township, common sense is not so common. And I think that's the way you prevent making the kind of mistakes that we did when we were awarding bids for the land care and everything at the last meeting. It was an embarrassing fiasco. And they had to go back to the old way because they didn't make the changes right. I don't want to be a party to this. If we go and have, just something passed here tonight, we might not make any changes at all if we have a chance to look, talk to the people. 1 month isn't going to hurt anyone, and it's ridiculous. So I think that we need to do some looking and some discussing. And sir, I took your you approached the mic. I signaled for you to come up because you had your hand up.
I was just wondering, before we do the vote, where is the public that supports this? You say that there's all these people concerned, they gotta do this, they gotta do that. All of you to support it, raise your hand.
None.
Okay.
There are no show of hands.
So why don't you take your time and do it right?
Thank you. That's exactly what we need to do.
For the record, Mrs. Vislowski, this was advertised at a public meeting, and you've had access to this document for several weeks, including getting it on Friday in your packet like we did.
Mr.
So
Harvey,
you had your chance.
Don't tell me how to do my job.
Ask Mr.
I
Bennett
see what you
questions.
do.
Excuse me. You had your chance to ask questions and raise these issues and take these trips you've talked about, and you've chosen not to do that.
No, I didn't choose not to
coming
do
in
that.
here
You
and-
don't know
and-
why.
Excuse me.
You're shooting from the hip again.
Excuse me.
And I'll
No,
be quiet
Mrs.
while you interrupt me, Mr.
Excuse
Harvey,
me.
because you're good
Actually,
at that.
you're interrupting me.
No, you're
so
ignorant.
Coming here and saying that you don't have no idea what's going on and just got this tonight is incorrect.
I don't know the detailed
And
changes, and how did you manage
You
to get
should
your
have.
nose in this and do this? When were the discussions made when these changes changes were being discussed? Who discussed them and where? Down at his office, probably, because that's where you
actually-
meet secretly.
Actually, Mr. Bennett was the one who raised it with me because he was getting.
Yes, he raised it with you, but he didn't raise it with me. I doubt that he raised it with
Probably.
Mr. Zupka, and we're not allowed to get an item on the
But you
agenda,
had-
and I don't want to fight.
You
So
had-
button it up.
You had a chance to raise those issues when this was advertised several weeks ago.
I had higher priorities, sir.
That's fine.
I was in the hospital.
Okay?
My cancer is back again, maybe. I'm getting tests. Don't tell me how to do my job. I have more hours in, productive hours, than you ever thought of.
Okay.
And I resent your dictatorial insinuations. And it's a pity that everyone else sits here like a deaf mute.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Zupka.
if we table this evening, as Mr. Bennett indicated, there's probably some residents out there that are looking to do projects.
Yes.
Why don't we just handle them the same way they have been handled? They will have to go to the zoning hearing board and get a variance. Mr. Bennett knows what the problem is. If it's a good project, he can recommend that they get the variance there until we go through all this, make all the changes we feel it should be. But to actually act on it this evening, we could put something in there, and then somebody could come in and present a project that fits under the new ordinance, and that's going to be totally wrong in there, and we'll be fighting that. At least if we leave it this way right now and just deal with it the way we have been for the past 2 years or whatever, and Mr. Bennett possibly can just fast-track the people that have good projects that are waiting to get it done, and within a month or 2 months, hopefully have all the correct measurements, impervious surface percentages, everything that'll make everybody happy.
But I understand your point, Mr. Zupka. My concern is, and Ms. McCall actually raised this, having to pay for a variance that we're then going to say, well, we're going to change this so you didn't need this anyway. And the other issue is, even if it's fast-tracked, as you heard, we're talking about 2 months, possibly, maybe longer, to get on the zoning board agenda, and then have...
You mean if there's somebody there, Mr. Bennett just couldn't turn around and tell them to come in at the next
and it still follows procedures, Mr. Bennett, correct? Or
Well, it has to be, zoning hearing board has to be advertised twice. They have to have their application in 3 weeks before the meeting. So that's a month there, and then they have to wait a month
right.
after for an appeal process. You know, there's a 30-day appeal period from zoning decisions.
So essentially, it puts us at the same time period as if, we were to either table this tonight, make some changes, start re-advertising again in a couple weeks, or if we approved it tonight, made suggestions, started advertising those changes in a couple weeks, and then, started moving. Mr.
I remember...
It's roughly 2 or 3 months. It's about the same.
I remember...
Ridiculous.
Yeah,
That's what it is. It's
Mr. Zupka?
I remember about eight years ago, maybe it was a little longer, there was a resident over, I believe, on Martha Drive, actually opened up the house, and we had a public, I wouldn't say a public meeting, but we had an informal meeting in their backyard, and it had to do with the drainage, and so it was 8 or 9 years ago, and then we acted on it. Actually, I remember Jonathan was at the same.
I remember that meeting.
The same meeting.
That was when the Falsington Woods was going in.
Oh, okay, well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was my,
Okay.
right, it
All
was
right,
my neighbor's house.
But again, if we wanted to, or advertise, have a, if you want to call it a public meeting or an informal meeting here with the residents, so they can see exactly what we're going to do.
Okay. All right, Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to see us wait, and for those people that I know are being inconvenienced by having to go through the whole variance process, if we make these changes, maybe there's some way to refund the fees they paid for the variance. I don't know whether we can legally do that, but it seems only fair. I understand their concern, but I also understand the concern of the folks that are here tonight.
Yeah. Question I had for Mr. Clark. If, let's say, because one of the concerns I'm hearing is, and I see 3 options here this evening, to table this, come back and, with the corrections, to pass it as is and then immediately start working on corrections. The two, I guess, major options, I guess, are there. If, in terms of someone coming in with a plan, one of the concerns is, let's say, if we approve this evening and then start immediately working on corrections to it in terms of impervious and duplexes and setbacks, if someone comes in with a plan to build an addition, or if someone comes in with a plan for a duplex or something like that, in that time frame, in that window, then people are stuck, as Mr. Conklin talked about, that kind of situation. What is, I know in terms of zoning, if we start advertising for a change in zoning, let's say we advertise in 2 weeks for a change in zoning, and someone in that area that we're looking to change puts in a plan, is it under the old, or they have to take notice of the change?
Under the pending ordinance doctrine, if we have advertised an ordinance change, and in the interim, from the time it is advertised and until the time it is passed, somebody submits a plan that is inconsistent with the proposed new ordinance, they will be bound by the proposed new ordinance once it is passed.
Okay.
We have to advertise with specificity for that to be true.
No, that's right.
I'm suggesting, I happen to know as much about zoning or more than you do in this township,
No, you
sir.
don't.
Oh, yes, I do.
All right.
Now, I disagree with him. We're back to my original motion to table, which makes sense. And when we advertise, what we need to do is put a sign just at the entrance of Nottingham Village and say, there will be a general discussion meeting on zoning changes that may affect your property. That meeting will be the first meeting of the Board of Supervisors in June. And please come out if you're concerned about what it might do to your property. Now, that is the logical American way, the legal way to do it. You don't just go and advertise something when you don't even know for sure what kind of changes you wish to make. Mr. Harvey insisted that he had had it all the while. He has not one intelligent suggestion to make here tonight except to ran-rob it through. I say table it till the first meeting in June. That date, we'll have to know that. It has to be tabled to a date certain. Let's give the residents a chance to come out and be heard. And that can be done by posting the 2 entrances to Nottingham.
That actually was done. Now, the issue we have here, I think, is if we table it to a date certain, then make changes, then we're backing the clock up even further, because then we have to sort of start all over again. So I think if what we need to do is either approve it as is and start working on changes, or Mr. Clark, we would refuse to adopt it, I guess, and then immediately start working on new changes to the existing. Because if we table it, come back to it and discuss it just as it is now, then we still can want to make changes, then we are just backing everything up even more.
I'm proposing that we leave it open. We don't have to advertise something stupid that we're not sure we're going to do. All we have to do is have a general discussion. I'll be glad to be quiet while you interrupt me.
I think we're having a general discussion, well, most of us are having a discussion right now, and I think the ideas we have coming in are good ones. You know, changing the setbacks is a good idea. Changing the impervious is a good idea. The issue with the duplex is a good one as well. So I think we know the changes that have to be made. The question I have is whether or not we want to, how we start working on those changes. Do we delay or do we not delay? Okay.
So, Mr. Clark, would it be easier for us to just not approve this tonight, make adjustments to the existing zoning? Is that what you're saying? Or approve this and start working on it, changing the, it seems to me like it would be easier to tweak the existing zoning than it would be to.
It would be.
Yeah, I mean, we're really just talking about the building coverage is the big issue.
I don't know. I'm not sure about the setbacks either. What are the setbacks with the current as it is?
This is exactly the discussions I think we should have been having last month prior to coming here today to try and approve it. That's all we're asking, is we want to understand what changes you're going to be making. That's all. It was never posted on the entrances to Nottingham.
Yes, it is. There's
They
six.
must be small,
there's
because
six
I sure didn't
postings.
see it, and I go in and out of there every day.
There's a posting right on, and the posting follows.
I don't understand why we have to have this discussion and try and approve it all in one night. Let us understand the changes you're trying to make, how it's going to impact our area, and then vote on it.
Okay. All right.
Don't you believe, ma'am, that if the neighbors knew there was going to be a general discussion meeting without any specificity and just come out and be heard in case your property is affected, does that not just make sense without complicating it legally?
I think it makes sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Barber, if you want to get, or Mr. Conklin, you can speak again. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with your second suggestion. I know what you're looking at. It's all laid out here. I saw it. I'm not happy with it. I would much prefer that, yes, you adjust what you're going to do, vote down this change, instead of passing this and then changing it, or possibly not changing it. Forget that. This goes away. You make the adjustments on the setbacks, whatever you have to do to make this a little bit more palatable, have a discussion on it, and then vote on that.
Okay.
That would be my motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Conklin, I'll be glad to put a notice in the Vislowski newsletter announcing the date for all of Nottingham to come out.
Thank you.
And now what are we doing tonight?
Hi, Ray Barbaro, Nottingham. Just an observation. I worked in a major corporation for 35 years. If I went to my board of directors with a proposal that I was going to ask them to pass tonight and tell them tomorrow I'll start working on the changes to what you're going to approve tonight, I wouldn't be working there tomorrow. They'd look at me like I'm nuts. So I understand what you're saying. You want to give considerations to the setbacks and the other. That should be done prior to an approval. You don't approve something that's wrong, knowing that it's wrong, to go back and fix it the next day. It's ludicrous.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the pleasure of the board at this point. I think we need.
I make a motion to table to the first meeting in June. And what is that date? Does anyone have a calendar?
June
We have
7th.
to. June 10th?
7th.
June 7th, thank you. My motion is to table this item until June 7th.
I'll second it.
All right, motion to table has been made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Technically, we are continuing it to June.
That's what we're doing.
We're not tabling it.
Well, we're
We are
tabling to continue.
No, we are continuing the hearing until June 7th.
Mr. Clark, my first motion was accurate when it got shot down.
That was because
This
you were
is,
making a motion to table. Now you're continuing to a date certain, so this.
we are continuing, and I brought that issue up, at a date certain.
Again, we're agreeing with each other. We're continuing this to June 7th.
I better reevaluate my position if you're agreeing with me.
Motion to continue.
Twice in one night.
Mr. Clark needs some direction. Motion to continue. There is an allowance for discussion, correct?
Yes.
All right. Discussion regarding the motion to continue.
I'll second that.
Well, Mr. It has been made second to a date certain, June 7th.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just that I appreciate the efforts of Mr. Bennett to try to find a way to accommodate the people in the neighborhood that have kind of been tied up in a zoning that didn't fit for some obvious reasons. But hearing the residents that are here tonight, I think the best solution is to continue it, to make the changes that we need to make, and then bring it up again. I think that makes sense.
Tom, I second that. Mr. Snipes is right. You deserve credit for the hard work that you do for us.
I'm not making a motion. It's already been made. But I don't want Mr. Bennett to feel like we're not appreciating the effort he made, because obviously he's getting comments from people in the neighborhood. So.
Mr. Dents, any comments or questions?
No, I agree
All
with
right.
Mr. Snipes.
The one issue I have is I want to make sure that we're clear on exactly what we're doing. I want to make sure Mr. Bennett has direction from this board as to what he's supposed to be doing next. First, are we going to ask him just to leave this as is Or do we want him to start making changes to this? That, I think, is an important thing to discuss right now. I would like to see him, I don't see much point in leaving it as is if we're just going to have the same discussion in a month. Why don't we, if we're going to continue it, ask him to start making changes to it?
Tom, my advice is to sit tight and wait until we have the general discussion so we know how the people feel. And it wouldn't hurt to put flyers around Nottingham. We waste money on a lot of things we don't need. We could do the public a service by putting flyers in all of the houses in Nottingham, announcing that meeting and saying, if you don't come, you may not be happy with the changes that are made. Come and be heard.
Okay, I have a list of all the addresses, the property owners.
Tax property, yeah.
They all got notified by mail, and that has to be done according to the municipal planning code.
People have a fatalistic idea, Mr. Bennett. They say we can't make any difference if we go. But there are just a few people here tonight, and they have made a difference. And hopefully, the people in Nottingham will come to the next meeting, and if they don't, tough darts.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I understand you, you're wondering whether we are making changes to the zoning as it now exists, or whether we're making changes to the zoning that we might change.
Yeah, I mean,
we might put.
Again, I think we've heard enough from people that are obviously concerned with the document as is. So to me, it seems like a waste to just continue a discussion of the exact same document. Why don't we start making changes to it now?
Correct.
You know? So that's my.
A general discussion, no agenda except Nottingham Village and their zoning.
General.
We don't have to specify what we're going to do because we don't know what we're going to do.
We need to make changes.
All right, so because we need clarification to this, I think. This isn't clear enough. So just saying we're having a general discussion doesn't do anything, doesn't give Mr. Bennett any direction. Saying a general discussion means we don't make any changes for another month, which to me isn't acceptable. We need to do something with the existing ordinance.
Well, I think the residents have identified their concerns. We can certainly ask him to begin to work on those. That makes sense.
All right, so then we'll look to, and the next question is, do we need a month to do that, or can we have 2 weeks to do that? Again, thinking of just getting this done for those residents who want to have, who have projects that are waiting.
I can start working on it immediately. The big thing comes down to the advertising and the notifications.
Right.
That's what, it has to be done according to the municipal planning code, or it won't be.
Okay, so let's take a look.
Excuse me, please. What will you advertise? You have no clear direction from your board. There are 5 members here who appear to have differences of opinion. You cannot advertise something that may not fly. If we just sit tight, leave things as is, the individuals who are contemplating going to the zoning hearing board for a special exception or a variance will probably choose to wait until after that June 7th meeting. I would. So my advice to you, Tom, would be not to do anything until you get a clear directive from your board.
Okay.
I think what to do tonight is to kill this tonight and then start from scratch. Have a discussion on what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Start over.
what we have to
But there's already a motion to table this,
Right,
which I think we should
there's a motion to continue.
continue.
Motion to continue as it is now. So let's have a vote on motion to continue as it is now.
No, the motion was to continue this hearing, not as it is now. No, I don't want to approve that, and I'm not going to probably vote to approve it. Don't laugh, Mr. Harvey. I forgot more about zoning than you're ever going to learn.
But then your motion to continue is to continue discussing this. If we're going to vote this down, then there's no motion to continue.
I agree with Mr. Dance. We just go back to square one and don't fix it unless we fix it right.
Withdraw a motion, withdraw a second. Would you like to withdraw a motion to continue?
My motion is all right.
Okay.
We're continuing the hearing, and we're opening
Mrs.
it
Pullen?
up to the entire Nottingham community and the rest of Falls Township if they're interested enough to
All right,
come.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zephyr?
Yes, to continue.
Mrs. Wisłowski?
Yes, to continue until June 7th.
Mr. Harvey?
No.
Mr. Dent?
No.
Snipes?
No.
Now, Mr.
Now, I'm going to
Dents-
make a motion that we deny this ordinance tonight.
Thank you.
And have a discussion and start from scratch on June 7th.
Vote for that.
Okay, all right.
I'll second it.
Make the
Motion
motion.
made, Mr. Snipes seconds. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zepka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wislowski?
Absolutely.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Now we start from scratch, June 7th. Tell your neighbors.
Don't forget, Mr. Bennett, you got a couple more things
They
here.
don't go anywhere, Tom.
All right. Item number 7, consider adoption of code amendment to Chapter 209 regarding driveways. I guess one of the changes, we're putting this into the zoning, and one of the changes that's being made, for example, is we're allowing people to use pavers on their driveways. I think the old ordinance that existed didn't allow pavers because pavers obviously a relatively new kind of surface. It was just concrete or blacktop. Any other, well, I think there's a setback
Well,
change.
This particular section was left out of the zoning code when it was adopted. Driveways, 209-43.1 was left out.
Why?
I believe they thought it was addressed in subdivision land development, chapter 191.
Mr. Chairman, if I could help just for a second. The driveway was taken out of the zoning office ordinance during the code amendment in 2008, and it was thought at that time to put it into the driveway chapter, these requirements. But Mr. Bennett, after he took over as zoning officer, and I agree that we should put this in the zoning ordinance because these are issues that should be resolved through zoning and not through a chapter of the Falls Township Code. That's why it was changed.
Okay.
And that's why we want to change it back.
Yeah, so Mr. Sullivan and I discussed it, and we did add pavers in, and most of it's the same as what it was before. We did make a couple changes, slight changes, not joining driveways, keeping them 2 foot off the property line, because a lot of natural flow of water drains to the front of a property, and if they go to the property line, they're putting that water on their neighbor's property, and that's not the way it is designed to be. Okay. So, but yeah, this is pretty much the same as what it was in the old zoning code.
Okay.
That's another reason why we shouldn't fix it if it ain't broke.
All right, comments or questions regarding the driveways amendment? Mr. Zupko?
No, I have none. It seems straightforward.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
No, it makes sense.
Mr. Dents?
No.
And I have none. Any public comment needed? See no hands. Okay, looking then for a motion to adopt ordinance 1102, which is amendment to Chapter 209, Article 2, Section 5, definitions, and enactment of Chapter 209, Article 5, Section 43.1, driveways. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zepka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wislowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, item number 8 is consider adoption of code amendment to Chapter 203, Section 39, subsection 26, I guess it is, vehicles and traffic placement of containers and maintenance and good repair. Mr. Bennett, give us an idea what this is about.
Apparently, we've had a lot of complaints about people putting their trash out on sidewalks, things of that nature. So when people go to use the sidewalks, they can't because there's bags of trash or debris on the sidewalks.
Okay. I think it's also what the handicap ramps too, the ADA ramps on the corner.
Yeah, they're putting on the curb depressions in the corners for handicap, and so they're blocking them.
Okay. All right. All right. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupko?
Yes. Well, I say a lot about, I see more people walking in the street than I see on the sidewalk, but I understand that. But now, this also says on here that trash, recycling, yard waste, discarded, and other items placed on or near the sidewalk are prohibited from being on township or state roads. Now, Waste Management for many, many years has asked to have it put out in the street at the curb line. This is saying you can't put it out on the curb, out on the other side of the curb because it'd be in the street. You can't put it on the sidewalk because most trash cans are about 23 to 24 inches around. Most of our sidewalks are about 40 inches. So if you put it on the sidewalk, you're blocking over half the sidewalk. A lot of the streets that have been redone are lower, and the ends of the lawns have a slope on them, so if you put them on the end of your lawn, they fall over. So going by this, where do I put my trash?
I would imagine the object of this is to get it to be put on the green belt in between.
Well, I don't have that. A lot of the streets don't have that. Now, we've talked earlier today about trying to be more green. If I move my trash cans back up further on my lawn or even on my lawn, as the trash people come to pick up the trash, it's going to take them another 2 to 3 seconds to get to it. And that doesn't seem like a lot. But by the time they get started and do the whole day, that could up to another hour, hour and a half that truck is idling, and
Right.
we're
I
putting
think
more
the
out
basic
there.
concern is sidewalks and the handicap corners, the depressions is the main.
Oh, I agree with you, but the way this is worded, not to put in the streets.
Well, as it's written here, Mr. Zupka, prohibited from being placed in township or state roads is the existing. The underlined parts basically is under.
Well, I understand that's existing,
all right,
but
yeah. Under paragraph A, it just sort of clarifies exactly types of things.
I really hope we don't get into trying to enforce them being out there.
Right. Mrs. Kozlowski.
I have no comment.
Mr. Snipes.
No, I think it makes sense.
Mr. Dents.
This is to keep people from blocking sidewalks, basically, so you can walk by.
Yes.
No, that's, makes sense to me, too.
Right.
And especially for people that are in wheelchairs, makes a lot of sense.
Right. Okay. And I mean, even, kids and bikes and people pushing baby strollers, that kind of thing, being able to use those ramps. So I don't have any questions either. Comments from public? See no hands. One name? Okay, is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You put the trash out on the sidewalk. You used to have not to put it out by 7 o'clock at night. But since these new sidewalks were put in, people walking, when they come by your driveway, it can almost fall over. The sidewalk's this, and then it slants down. And that's why most of them walk on the street.
Exactly.
But the trash cans have been there. We're told not to put them out before 7 o'clock at night. But yet, you have basketball hoops out there on the sidewalk. Nobody hollers about them.
Well, I think there are existing, and I don't think this addresses that, but I think there are existing
Just
codes
enforce
that talk
it,
about.
put them out at 7 o'clock, and there's no problem.
And I think you're right. Is it 6 or 7 o'clock? I think it's 6, isn't it?
For trash?
For trash.
I believe it's 6.
I think it's 6. But I mean, in some cases, depending on where you live, it could take, when trash men get there isn't exactly first thing in the morning. It could be later in the day, and so the trash can still could be there at a time when people are using it. So I understand your concern. And we do have ordinances, this is actually designed to sort of improve the ordinance, because we do have things now to keep people from blocking sidewalks with anything. This is just specifically regards with trash and trash containers and things like that. So any other public comment needed? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so this would be ordinance 11-03.
3.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
All right, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pull?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a short break before we get to public comment. Okay, we're going to bring our meeting back to order, approximately 9:17. We're looking at item number 10, public comment. Reminding our speakers, 5-minute maximum per person, 45-minute maximum overall. First name on the list is Roland Kenny.
Good evening, Roland Kenny, Falls Township. only bring this hat every now and then. This is Danny Faulkner's number that he had on his hat. Some of you can remember him 30 years ago. He was an officer down in Philadelphia that was gunned down by a coward that still sits on death row up near Pittsburgh. And every time somebody backs that murderer up, I have to come here and say something about it. Now, we had France back him, named the street after him. Then we had the lunatics out in Hollywood send him money. Now we have the teachers and the teachers union out in California sending them money. I don't want it to come this far. Now, some people in Admiral Road have been asking me how am I going to vote this year, and I'm asking the Republicans in this primary election to put Mr. Dell on for supervisor. I'm asking them to put Jan Poslowski as the judge. I'm asking them to put Dorothy Poslowski on the school board. And for the Democrats, I like to see them, the Democrats, give Jan Poslowski the judge, Dorothy Poslowski school board, and Rocco and Galloway for supervisors. That's all I have. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Guido Mariani.
Good evening. It's easier to give birth than to resurrect the dead. Now, that's a fact, and it's a fact that this board, I think, is familiar with, and this board practices. I say that because if anyone thinks that the plan to spend well over $1 million to build an unnecessary sidewalk along New Falls Road for non-existent pedestrians, then I want all the voters out there to know you're wrong. I think the campaign to do so continues, and my feeling is it's just in a temporary suspensive mode. And I say that because whenever the subject comes up, we never get, yes, we're for it, no, we're not. We always get, well, I get calls. I'm getting telephone calls for these sidewalks, or as Mr. Chairman, you said during the last meeting, you see kids walking along New Falls Road. Now, I have continued to go back and forth on New Falls Road. I've been doing this for months. 6 times a day. I don't see all these pedestrians. I don't see all these kids. Now, maybe I'm doing it at the wrong time, so you must be doing it at a different time if you see them, but I cover pretty much most of the day. I wanted to bring this up because May 17th, we're going to have a primary election here. And that's going to be followed sooner than some of you voters think. The general election is right behind it. Now, if the voters out there are opposed to what I consider a massive, unnecessary expenditure, because we're back into these $1 million projects again, ask your candidates whether or not they are for putting sidewalks on New Falls Road. And just want a simple yes or no answer from these candidates. And if you get, well, I need more information, I have to study, what they're telling you is they're for that massive, unnecessary expenditure. Now, here's a project that I'd like to see this board give birth to. And I'll bring this up again. I've been bringing this up for years. I'd like to see this board accumulate the millions of dollars that are coming into this township to invest it, put it in a secured income-producing account, and then every year you send dividend checks to the residents. You voters out there, before this election, talk to your candidates, ask them if they would like to do that. If they would, you want to vote for them. If you're against that, don't vote for receiving dividend checks. But I'm telling you, pay attention to what's going on. Watch your money. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sorry, I think it's your name signed here. It's a little tough to read. Sweeney? No.
Queenan?
Queenan, that's what it is. Thank you. Mr. Queenan.
He's my vintage. I've known him for 100 years, right?
I live at 704 Chatham Road, and behind my property is county land, which we have a flood back there. It's nothing but a swamp and a dirty water, black water. The ducks don't even want to live back there anymore. And Mr. Harvey was there last year, and he seen what it was there. And the county promised to clean it up last year in the month of July or August when it dried up. Well, they never showed up. And me and my neighbor next door, we keep it clean, try to keep it clean. And if you look back there, you'll see the trash that we picked up and left there. And now, since that last storm, we have more trees that fell down. And it's water, and you can't do nothing back there now. And, well, I'm thinking it may be Falls Township's job to clean it, clean the creek out. Because there are pipes from the roadway go right through there into the creek. From Trenton Road all the way down, you've seen that one place. And then from Olds Boulevard at different places, they come back in there. And right now it's a mess. There's more water every time it rains. The last rain we had, when that big rain came, and the trees were, coming down and that, well, the water come up to my bank this time. But nothing has been done back there. And I'd like to know whether in the agreement when the Danner sold it to the county, whether there was anything in there that who takes care of that creek back there?
I know.
Water runs.
First of all, Danhurst didn't sell it to the county.
Well,
that was part of the Lake Caroline lawsuit. But I'll give you a really good suggestion. Tomorrow, the county commissioners are holding their meeting down here in Falls Township. They're going to be at William Penn Manor. Go there because the chairman, Charlie Martin, is looking for votes, and make it very clear to him that you're going to advertise that he's responsible for not taking care of that land.
Well,
that's what I'd do.
It's a mess back there right now. Yeah. And I would say somebody should look into the agreement when the county took it over, who was supposed to clean that area where your sewer pipes from the roads go to.
They're supposed to do it, and they took it over because Falls Township was broke.
Well,
we didn't have any money at all and couldn't maintain it, and they accepted the responsibility. So that's a good time to talk to them before the election while they're campaigning, and they're looking for you to support them. I actually got a letter. I'm not going to it. I know what I'm going to do in the election. Go tell them.
Mr. Sullivan, you were there, was it last year, with someone from the county to take a look? I think even Commissioner Marseglia might have been with you to see that.
That was Mr. Mitchell from the County Parks Department.
Okay. And what determination, in terms of looking at it, obviously it's a problem.
It is a problem, and it's not. There's no easy solution because the area, and I think it's Queen Anne Drive, is lower than Lake Caroline, so it's virtually impossible the way it's configured right now.
Not according to the county.
Yeah, that is according to the county.
I have their marked paper. What they wrote is right in here.
Yeah, that's a problem
where I live, I'm higher than Lake Caroline.
Right.
But now it's reversed because of the rainwater. Everything's getting washed out of there, and it's making higher down there than it is, and we're going lower on account of all the wash getting down there.
That's somewhat correct. It's lower. It can't drain. It's virtually impossible to drain the way it's configured right now. And the pipes he's talking about that come from the roadway are actually 3/4 silted in below the level of the water that's there now.
I remember seeing that.
And they did say they would come clean it up, which they claim they do every year, and
They haven't
based on
come,
what he
they
said, I
haven't
don't
even
think they've
come
been out
down
there.
near the place.
You know, there's a group that's cleaning out the drainage ditches in Levittown, and I happened to be at a meeting once, just about 3 weeks ago, with the gentleman who started that project. And I can get you in touch with him, or I can call him for you and ask him if he'll take a look at that. It's like a drainage ditch. It's just a place, a retention basin, but it is all muddied up and silted because of the creek. But I'll have him get in touch with you if you want to leave your phone number with me.
Right.
Okay? Promise I'll do it.
There's one more question.
Sure.
Before I leave. You were supposed to find a blueprint. Was it ever found with the sewer that went back there?
I gave those to the defunct and now deceased Unitech engineer who was the township engineer. They had estimated that it was going to cost about $250,000 to have the sewer and water systems surveyed so we could have plans. And I said, I have plans. I bought them when I sued Danhurst, and I will give them to the township. And I tried to get them back. I gave them to Bruce Campbell, the engineer, and I tried long before he died to get them returned to me. He was going to copy them, and he kept them, and I don't know where they are now since he died.
Because part of it is underground back
Yeah.
there, because my kids used to hide in there.
Well, Howard Levan was the engineer for Danhurst Corporation. He's the one that designed and had installed the sewer and water systems. And we bought those in the prorated price of our homes. But in 1961, some enterprising politicians had a secret meeting up at Messer House. That's where George Galbraith lived. And they bought the Sewer and Water Authority again. It's called the 1961 indenture. And we paid $4.3 million and bought our sewer and water systems for the second time. And that's what helped me to get involved, and that's why I sued Danhurst and got the swimming pool and 3 arches and all that stuff, because we were being shafted by our own politicians. And they decided to keep that meeting a secret. And somehow I managed to get a copy of the tape, because they called it an official meeting in a private residence. And, you know, it was not advertised or anything. It was a township entity. But that is the history on it.
So I don't know if what we have here in terms of blueprints regarding that specific area. Mr. Sullivan, are you aware of anything that we have right now?
We do. We have the, what's called the Otter Creek Watershed Study blueprints, where they did survey that area.
Do you have, oh, did you do another survey then?
It wasn't us, it was Pickering Courts in Somerson.
No,
Hired
but-
by the county to do that.
Okay, the county did it?
Yes.
Okay, because you haven't seen the Levan plans
No,
then, I
I
take it?
haven't seen those. I just have
I
the
think
ones
they
from-
just disappeared. But, you know, that was $250,000 worth of plans.
And how old's the Pickering Courts plan you have now, roughly?
Roughly 10 years, probably maybe more than that.
All right, so it's obviously going to be, it should be, becoming more accurate. But yeah, I mean, Mr. Queen, I wish there was an easy solution. I think obviously, making some noise with the county commissioners tomorrow is a good idea. And I'm going to make sure I contact one of the commissioners to let her know that this is continuing to be an issue and that we were promised to have something done and nothing was done. Other than that, I mean, I'm not sure. We'll have to discuss other steps we can take. I mean, we're sort of at a disadvantage because it's not our property and it's obviously another
Well,
branch of
that's what I
government. We have to
wanna know.
try and force them to do something. Could we, I guess, go in and clean it and then bill the county? I guess maybe but as Mr. Sullivan's saying, it's not just an issue of cleaning, it's an issue of redesigning the drainage, which is not easy and not cheap.
It has to be dredged.
So it's not even
It's
the dredging.
just so overgrown.
No, it's,
Yeah.
you've seen it. It's
Yeah.
all the way from my place all the way down to Queen Anne. It's jammed.
Right.
But like I said, since your pipes and all that go into there, in that agreement when that was sold, somebody ought to go look and find out who is responsible for that
The crooked politicians. That's who.
He means in terms of cleaning it up. Yeah, I know your point is that if the drains are coming from underneath our roads, are we responsible for cleaning up whatever comes out of them? I don't really know. I don't know the answer to that. So we'll have to try and find that out, and we'll try and get the county to do something, anything at this point. But and I'm sure with the rain we've had, it's probably worse now than it's been in a while.
It's worse now than it ever was.
Yeah. So we'll continue to hopefully not beat our heads against that wall like you've been doing, but we're trying to get something done.
Mr. Chairman, it would seem to me that and this is not going to solve the whole problem, the engineering problem, obviously, but if there's any way, I know it's county property, but is there any way we can send some of our staff in there from time to time to clean, to cut brush, to do something? I don't know if there are liability issues or whatever, but can we contribute in some way? I don't want to go down a slippery slope of doing the county's work, but here are residents who need some support.
Right. I mean, certainly we can take a look at what we can do, and I would have no problem billing the county for that work that we're doing. It's certainly, it's not our job to be paying for it. It's the county's job, and they're obviously not doing it.
Right.
But we can take a look, see if Mr. Arnao can go down and take a look, see if there's anything we can do, and just give us an idea of his thoughts. In the meantime, we'll keep talking to the county commissioners and seeing what.
Well, I got an email from a county commissioner back in 2006 that says, "Don't worry about it. We're going to take care of it."
Well,
now's the time to get
211.
All right.
It's
I understand.
the same way.
There are 3 of them that want your vote this time, and they're all 3 going to be at that meeting tomorrow. And the reason I know about it is I'm being courted by one of them like I'm a 19-year-old beauty queen because he wants my support. And I'm not too happy about what goes on, and so, I've just not even answered. But that's how I know the meeting's taking place, because it's the day after this one.
Thank you, Mr. Queen.
Give me your phone number before you leave. Good, here.
Al Wilson?
And put your address, because I'll make them go there. Good.
Good evening. I would like to offer my condolences on the passing of your brother on Easter Sunday, or I'm sorry, your brother on Easter Sunday.
It was Palm Sunday. Thank you, Mr.
Palm Sunday, okay. And one of the things I wanted to address was there was a letter in the Courier on the April 25th addressing the Easter egg hunt. I don't know if you gentlemen read it or you have not.
No, I don't get the Courier.
Okay, I'll give you the gist of it. And it's from a Mrs. Vanderwalker. She's speaking of the Easter egg hunt, how she took her kids there, and the adults grabbed all the candy, and her kids did not get any. They got empty eggs. And she closes her letter with saying, "I honestly don't think we'll attend this event next year. The out-of-states can have it." So evidently there was a lot of out-of-state people, and their parents took the eggs and everything from the kids. And I agree with Mr. Marinani about the rebates, but I don't agree that we should wait for that, because we have all this money to spend boat ramps and doing sidewalks. And I mean, as far as the lights, I remember Mr. Obert asking you about the lights down at the park, and you're saying no, 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 but then you're going to open it 24 hours a day. The kiosk that you're putting there, is that part of the original 1.2 million? Or is that in addition to?
I don't know. No, I think the 1.2 million included a couple of things that we're not doing, but I don't think the kiosk was part of it. No.
No. So the kiosk, and how much was that again?
19,000.
19,000, and that's an add-on, right?
Well, not necessarily, because we were supposed to build sort of a harbor master sort of building, which we're not building. So I don't know what that would have cost, what the difference was there.
Okay, and I done a little checking on the Chamonix State Park. Mr. Dent, you're right, it is open 24 hours from April till October. And I asked about parking down there, and they have park rangers, but they couldn't tell me as to whether they're actually there 24 hours or not. And they also advise that you call before you bring your boat, because they do a lot of dredging down there. And the state signed a 30-year lease with them to run it, because the state couldn't make money on it. So they're now going to have a vendor operate it for them, hoping to make money. And let's see. Again, back to the boat ramp. I don't have a boat. Closest I could get is a shirt with a boat, so I got that. So maybe I can sit down at the boat ramp with my boat shirt. Right now, I'm looking for an airplane shirt in case you guys want to build an airport. Maybe that's what you could do. Have seaplanes land back in that other gentleman's backyard where they have the flooding. And in closing, I'd like to thank my attorney, Ron Elgart, Judge Frisch, and the Supreme Court for allowing me to stay on the ballot. And I also would like to announce that if the propaganda goes out and it's slanderous, like I suppose it will be, I will be suing, because I do see someone in the audience who published my Social Security number on the internet. And with that, I'd like to close. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, one other thing. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
When you asked at the last meeting, you said you had one house. You asked Mr. Dents, he had one house.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Kozlowski had several homes that she disclosed. I do not remember what Mr. Zupka said.
I didn't ask Mr. Zupka.
And you missed Mr. Snipes. And I'd like to hear that answer. If you'd like to ask those two, I'll be in the back. Thank you.
Well, if they feel free to answer if they want to.
I didn't want to, but I was forced to by you, Mr. Emperor. And I noticed, too, that Snipes didn't get asked, but don't worry, because we'll make it public.
Sorry, I didn't ask Mr. Zupka either, so. Joe Kraus?
Hi, I got a couple things this week. First thing I like to talk about is, again, energy, all right? Now, this building in this area was built probably, when everybody started using energy-saving fluorescent bulbs, energy-saving ballast. If you took this room and you shut off the air conditioner and you had the doors open and you started out the next morning, and you closed the doors and you took a thermometer and you just had it in here and just had the lights on, you'd be surprised how fast this room will warm up, okay? Same thing with my little store that is still not actually, no one came out to do any inspections on, okay? The fluorescent lighting will warm up your building. It will put you out of business. It's simple. Let's take a look at this thing. Okay, if they're 40-watt bulbs, it's 160 watt per fixture. You take all these fixtures, it's 3,840 watts. That's a lot of wattage. I know the room has to be bright, but maybe we need it bright here, but maybe dimmer there, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You can all save energy different way, but there's also different ways of using newer energy lights that would actually give you almost the same looms per foot, but you're not going to use the thing. So that's just something to think about. It's a way of saving money. Now, I remember a few years back, someone talked about civil defense. This was probably way before some of these people were on the board, except for maybe Dorothy. And we almost lost our grid a couple years ago. Somebody was lucky enough to hit that switch and we didn't go, our lights didn't go out, okay? And do we have a backup plan besides the fire companies for generators? Because the National Guards are like not around, they're in other countries now, So we should actually try to get a list of contractors that have got generators that can be on call in case we run into an emergency where we do lose the grid. It's an idea, okay? It's just an idea. I got this ice cream truck that's got this huge generator and it can do my house and the neighbor's house. It's amazing.
I'm
Okay.
close enough neighbor, come do mine.
Yeah. Okay. I held off filing for the permits for the store. Okay. The main reason is I wanted to get the gas shut off for the roof unit because I don't want to use the gas. The gas is locked off now. PE came out because it was the person that owns the shopping center. We had to go through them, and Philadelphia Gas came up and they padlocked the meter. So now I don't have no gas heat. The place has the downstairs. There's 2 Surbase heaters. When it got a little cold, I turned the Surbase heaters on, put a fan on downstairs, and it warmed the whole upstairs up. It's amazing. Hot air rises. Same thing with there's a little window air conditioner downstairs for the basement. Put a fan, brings the air upstairs. If it gets too hot, well, maybe you have to use a little bit more, but you could still save the money. If you got all these lights on, you're fighting it. Okay, that's why I'm using stand-up light fixtures with the energy-saving lights. Okay, but it's been now, I think it's been 2 weeks. I had the first 2 months rent-free, and I know after this month, then I'm going to be paying, well, I already paid for the month of June and the deposit. But I would have really liked to open up before Memorial Day weekend. But I can't see that happening right now. Anyhow, let's go back to the zoo. And now, has everybody seen the videos for the zoo?
Board members were sent letters several weeks ago, I guess, that if they wanted to see the disc, I believe Mr. Gray has the discs here that have what you're talking about in terms of the discs, in terms of the zoo itself. If any board member who's interested in finding out more about the Bucks County Zoo and the idea of maybe bringing it here to Falls Township, is free to get that.
Well, has anybody seen this? This was from the front page of the Courier. Again, it's the zoo.
Several weeks ago, correct? Is that okay? A couple weeks ago, maybe.
April the 15th, it was a Friday, 15th and 16th.
I'm not a subscriber, so I didn't see this.
The thing is, we're going to miss a big opportunity here if we don't get the zoo. The zoo's going to bring in more money into this township because it's something to see. The zoo will get bigger like the Cape May Zoo will. It'll be a great opportunity for this township. Other industries will come in, restaurants will come in, all of our public restaurants that are already there, they will benefit. It's a shame because I'll tell you, like, I was at the Bristol Car Show on Sunday, and I couldn't believe how many cars weren't there. Okay, that show used to have 350 cars before. They probably only had 200. I think the Courier Times said 200. It was in the B section of the of Monday's paper. I was surprised they still had it because the big news story was Bin Laden.
Right.
Okay, but the front page of the B section had the Bristol Auto Show, and they were saying they only had this many cars there. But I know years ago they used to be all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in fact, there's a picture of my car on the back page. Okay, so I don't know. The Jack Hanna worked hand in hand with Joe Fornatani and these people. We need to, try to get together. We need to at least have somebody talk to them, or even myself, that we can bring their board down and they could do their sales pitch. And then maybe we can get this thing moving, because what we're doing is, it's like people, when I have my Studebaker for sale, you snooze, you lose. If you don't bid on it, then you're going to lose it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's the whole thing. I think we should really try to move ahead and go in some sort of direction, that because it still has to have their own board of directors, it has to be approved by them, and we can get their board of directors or a representative of their board of directors to come down here and maybe tour where we could put it, okay, and then we can discuss it, and then we can bring it on the agenda item. Because again, it's them and it's us, and we got to combine together. That's a lot of work to put something together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I think it's a really worthwhile project. What do you think?
Well, like I said, there's information here which I would advise or ask board members to consider taking home with them before they leave. Mr. Gray can make that available. My concern would be where we're going to put it, quite frankly. I don't think the Township Park is big enough for it.
The Williams tract would have been a wonderful place.
If 11 years ago.
Yeah, but you still, there's some parts of that KYZ you could put it in. There's some parts where they had those quarries.
It's not our property, Mr.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
Mr. Krause.
it's not our property, but it's the thing is where you can get some areas in that area. The quarries on the other side.
If you were suggesting an airport, we might get one.
Well,
no zoo. Kids would go
we should
there.
have a heliport. It's a lot easier.
Right.
You know, but you know, it could be done. All you got to do is you got to just look at a big map and see where it could be done. You know, if you, like in Cape May, they have this area that it goes back to where the giraffes are at all. Well, they built these ramps, and they have the animals on either side. Yeah. And then you go back to see the giraffes.
Right. I mean, I've been there several times.
It's a great zoo.
It is a great zoo. It's also very big. It's a lot of property. I would venture a guess it actually might be bigger than the Philadelphia Zoo in terms of size, in terms of land.
Yes, it is. Yes, for
so,
size it is.
Again, the issue is.
But where you can go, and the whole thing is you have to like look at the whole thing of Falls Township and say, where could we put this in here? Could we put it on Bellis Island? We could put it on the island.
It's a possibility.
It's better than putting soccer fields there.
But we'll, it's something certainly we can, if board members are interested in doing that, that's something we can certainly look at.
We got to get something to say, like, hey, we're going to do something about it, or we're not going to do something about it. Let some other township get it.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. I'm not going to discuss this no more.
Do you want your newspaper back?
No, I can keep it.
Okay. Mr. Dell?
First question I have is the residents in Fallsington. They're talking about their drainage issues, and I know you live in Fallsington, so does Mr. Bennett. Is there any way, or is there any structure or retention basin back there that could be improved to help the drainage situation back there, or is there just no hope for them?
There are wetlands back there. So I think, and especially obviously with this spring the way it's been, I don't, you know, and as Ms. Shulsky said, it does, I mean, it floods there probably even in months when it's, or seasons when it's not this bad. I don't know, and you know, how much of that is something we can fix. It is open space back there. I don't know how much of it is an actual structure and how much of it's just naturalized, and the thought was that it would just be able to take care of itself. I don't know. I don't think they really built a specific structure. You know, I think the area that's sort of near my property actually was designed to sort of like be a buffer and gather some water. It doesn't really do that. It kind of flows away from, you know, down the other end of the development.
All right. Second thing is, I remember we used to own some piece of equipment that ran inside the cricks, sort of like an excavator. I don't know if it. Yeah. I don't think it was a tracked excavator, but it was a special.
Do we still have that, Mr. Gray? I don't think we do.
I do not know if we have that. I have to check.
You don't have it. You sold it years ago,
okay,
but I'm talking maybe 15 years ago.
Right,
but
okay.
You had a piece of equipment that actually sort of could walk along in these cricks
the drainage ditches,
and dredge them out.
Right. Spider.
Yeah, should we look into maybe getting something like that? Because it seems like we're just seem to be having more and more drainage issues, silt accumulation, and no one's ever doing anything with it. It just keeps getting worse, and no one's going in and digging this stuff out. Yeah, not to give Joe Arnao another job to do, but I mean, it's something that should be done if the county's not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, and part of the problem, and this isn't Mr. Queenan's issue, and it's not really affecting the Fallsington area, but in terms of a lot of the other areas, the Greenbelt areas that, you know, Goal has been cleaning out, the big problem really, quite frankly, is the residents who continue to dump everything they can find.
I know. I've helped Dale Frazier with some of it in the beginning.
It's pretty amazing. The
people
stuff that
across the street from the cricks throwing all their lawn debris back into the crick, and I understand that, and you know, there's only so much you can do about that.
Right,
but
and that's something that obviously, you know, and I've even been back there with him and found like whole fence posts with the concrete still attached to people just decided to put into. I mean, I'm talking wooden ones that are 8 feet high. Yeah. That they just ripped out and threw. You know,
we found motorcycles and batteries and tires.
Yeah,
and I mean,
that really clogs up everything.
Yes.
But
even after all that's gone, the silt, I would say, was more of the holdback than, say, a motorcycle or a fence post in the water.
If you've got enough of that stuff blocking it.
True,
it's
it's
gonna
not
block it.
helping,
So-
but I just didn't know if we would maybe venture into getting some piece of equipment that we could utilize that
We could
isn't going
see-
to get stuck down in there.
Yeah, Mr. Arneo obviously is the one who schedules and does that kind of maintenance and all of the cricks, and it's really kind of up to him if it's something he feels it would be valuable. I don't know, obviously it's not something we budgeted for this year. I don't know how much they cost or anything else, but.
I'm sure they're expensive.
Well, I'm sure they are too. I'm going
Yeah.
to take a look and see if it's something that he thinks is, would be valuable for us to have. I don't know. That's really his call. But
The other question I had is, do we plan on staying in this building for a long period of time, or do we have some future site that you guys are considering moving to?
I'm not planning on going anywhere.
Okay,
You know,
and
eventually
because I want to
I'll
bring
tonight,
up the fact that that property next door is still for sale.
Right.
And I didn't know if you guys have even looked at that property or even discussed, because if someone buys it, it's going for probably another 30 years. And I didn't know
Right.
if you looked to see how much that property's going for, or do we need it?
$1.2 million or $1.3 million, I think somebody told us. I think Mr. Peruzzi actually came in and was exploring the option of buying it and wanted to know if we were interested in it. And I, I don't really think and if we buy it, we'd have to obviously build a brand new facility. I don't really know.
I don't mean to build a facility on, but once you own the property, you
Well,
own it, and it's,
yeah.
it's an asset. I mean, and it's not like you're wasting the money.
Right.
I just didn't know if you guys ever
I think
even
he
thought
told
of
us the price was like 1.3 or something, and I don't think he was going to pay that. I think he was.
I think it was between 1 and 1.5, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So.
Is it
that's
5
that was the
acres?
Asking. I don't remember the size.
Well, Fred's not the owner, Paul Burns is, I think.
Oh, okay.
But he was looking. As I said, I think that's what it's up for. Mr. Peruzzi was, looking at, acquiring it, but I don't think he was interested in paying that much for it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And,
I don't have it myself. I don't have any interest. I don't know what the other board members feel, but I think we have enough property as it is right now, just here.
Andy, get elected and buy it.
It needs to be sort of, used maybe more efficiently here, what we have, but.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I know I beat you guys up on this last time, but the building, no one shoveled off the moss off the window out here yet. I didn't know if anyone was looking into building improvements or improving that greenhouse. you guys
Yeah,
have.
that's something that we're certainly, I'm going to probably sending something around to all the board members. I'm kind of working on just sort of a draft of an RFP that let board members take a look at and comment on in terms of trying to find somebody who can come in and give us an idea what we can do and really start the process of looking at the renovations we need to make and what would make sense and for the workers, for the tenants we have, how to make this building work a little bit better than it does, because there's certainly, it wasn't built as a municipal building.
No, I understand that.
And all the walls that have been sort of added and changed.
Used to be
and
a
offices
furniture
and
store or
stuff, and it
something,
was a
wasn't
car
it?
dealership before that, so it's
Yeah.
really, it needs some work. Like even just the cosmetic stuff out in that atrium is
Yes.
ridiculous.
It's
just,
awful.
Yeah, so we're going to start that process of just looking to see if we can find somebody to come in and give us some ideas and maybe give us some guidance in terms of what they think should be best in terms of how to do some changes to this strip building. But when we do that is sort of up to the board. I don't know in terms of how much it's going to cost and what our goals are, but certainly I think it's something we need to look at.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Dorothy Kozlowski.
I'm not quite sure what I want to do tonight, but I think I should start by thanking Mr. Harvey for the rotten way he conducted the last meeting, especially when he and Mr. Snipes were screaming at me during my time. And Snipes was all upset because I was asking about the Williams Tract and about some of the use of our public access channel. And then Harvey degrades further by demanding that I tell what properties I own, as if that's any of his business. There has never been a Kozlowski who stole anything or used someone else's money to do anything, but that's the nasty little inference he tried to do. And then Snipes got into the act, and they used up all my time. Snipes, I didn't think that Mr. Snipes could lose his cool, but I saw his father do that a couple of times to me, and it occurred. And I thought, I'm not going to start a fight. I'm too happy tonight. The public knows that there was a challenge to kick Alan Wilson off the ballot. And Mr. Kiernan, who stole Harry Fox's ballots and the checks in the 2005 election. That was, he was a Republican exec in the Republican Party, and none of the ballots for the Republicans in Falls Township were at the polls. And Mr. Fox called me the next morning and he said, Dorothy, can you help me find out what happened to my ballots? And I said, well, I was poll hopping, because that was the year that I ran. And I said, I saw a fellow named Kiernan, real cozy, down at the Penn Valley School with some of the people that are a disgrace to this township. And I said, who did you give them to? He said, Kiernan. And I said, well, you better ask him what he did with them. Well, now Kiernan has switched to Democrat, and he's on our zoning hearing board, and he's no asset, I can tell you that. But he's the one that filed to kick Alan Wilson off the ballot. Falls Township needs Alan here because I'm leaving, and we need somebody to watch these guys. Alan Wilson has a history. 2 times he's been on this Board of Supervisors. And the people who love me so much in that corrupt Democratic club started to slander him, and they resurrected something that needed to be addressed. And so he went to Doylestown before the Common Pleas Court, and Judge Frisch heard him. He wasn't represented by an attorney like the lowlifes were. And Judge Frisch ruled that Alan Wilson would definitely stay on the ballot. In the meantime, Mrs. Wilson became very ill because of the stress, and I felt so bad because I felt responsible. I had begged him to run for my seat since I wasn't planning to stay here. It's a lesson in futility. 47 years is long enough to deal with people with such low mentality and bad manners. It's just not worth it. I promised the public I would go and do something about school taxes, and that's exactly what I figured I'd do. But anyhow, they took an appeal, and when we were leaving the courthouse, Mrs. de Blasio, who's sitting back there, yelled at me and said, "It ain't over." And I just smiled nicely to her, because when you call a pretty girl ugly, she's just going to look at you and smile. So anyhow, they took an appeal to the Commonwealth Court. And the Commonwealth Court checked the jurisdiction, and they decided that it belonged before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And they did put an attachment to it when they sent that case up to the Supreme Court. They said, we agree with Ted Frisch, the judge from the Common Pleas Court in Bucks County. So it went up to the Supreme Court, and the decision came down yesterday. And the Supreme Court has said that Mr. Wilson will absolutely remain on the ballot. Now, the caution is this, and it's a twofold caution, so I hope you're listening, Mrs. de Blasio. I had to sue because I hadn't slandered anyone, and there was a conspiracy to set me up in a slander case. And they settled out of court with me. Now, I'm not allowed to tell how much money they had to pay me because I have to give it back. But the mud is scrubbed off the Wisławski name, and you better not put it back on. You're the one who stole my identity like a common thief and answered my emails. And I let you slide on that. But the totality of the circumstances might get your rear end back in court. And if you throw one more piece of mud at a Wisławski, you're going to be asking for problems. And if Alan Wilson gets any more mud flung on his name, I hope he deals with you like he promised to. Now, that is my speech for tonight. And I can tell you that you had better take heed, because I'm done monkeying around with you and that entire corrupt Democratic club. You've managed to take good care of yourself. And we'll address that in future writings that I plan to do, because I'm going to have time to do a lot of writing. I'm a candidate for the Pennsbury School Board. I don't want to go there, But I promised the public that I would if they want me to, because the school taxes are horrendous. And the public cannot support this any more than they can support some of the wild spending that's going on this board, because sooner or later, you've got to pay the fiddler when you dance. And we are dancing far beyond our means. But I have to wait for it to happen because I get outshouted. And speaking of shouting, while Mr. Harvey and Mr. Snipes were beating me up at the last meeting because I was daring to ask about township business, Mrs. Snipes gets up, and I answered something that she said about me, and she slammed the podium. She said, "This is my 5 minutes." And I thought, you know, this is going to be a hairy meeting. And I answered her back. And she had cursed me once in the ladies' room. I wasn't there, but one of my best friends was, and marched right into this meeting and addressed the crowd and said, "Let me tell you what just happened in the ladies' room." So here she's speaking love and getting along with everyone, and we need to work together, and I love my township and all that. She came out because I'm hot on the trail of the Snipes clan, and they know it. And they were tipped off. And there is an investigation that has begun, and it will be continued. But I can tell you that you hear an awful lot of propaganda at these meetings. And I will have, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. de Blasio walked out, because I wanted to tell that my newsletter is going to tell some of the lunatic stuff he has said. And Mr. Harvey shut down this meeting because Mrs. Snipes called me a lunatic, and it's not on tape. I'm just so sorry. That would have been a grand finale for my public speaking here at the township meeting. So I'll say get out to vote. If you don't get out to vote on May the 17th, you're going to deserve the kind of government you get, and wait until you see what the schools are costing you. It will be in the Wisławski newsletter, and I intend to get it to the printer very shortly. But read the newsletter. I'm putting a ballot in there. And if you don't want me to do anything about your school taxes, that's okay, because my heart is in Florida. I'm putting the roof back on my house since the tornado destroyed it. I like it down there. And there's no politics. I'm going to get a moat put around my house, and I'm going to stock it with alligators. And then, if anyone comes to my place that's a politician, I'm going to feed them to the alligators. So everybody, have a good night, and it's been a pleasure serving you here on this board, with the exception of having to deal with the corrupt Democratic Club. And they better mind their manners, because I'm not going to tolerate any more slanders against me or my family.
Okay, those are all the names we have on the list. I see one more hand. Mrs. Lindblom.
Norma Lindblom from Falls Township. Excuse me. I don't normally get involved in any kind of political thing because I like to stay as positive as I can and as neutral as I can. But I need to take this time to congratulate Mrs. Wisławski for the first time I've known her to serve out a term that she has taken an oath to fill. She's very cautious and telling us that she never lies. But every time you take an oath, you're making a promise. And every time you don't finish that seat or whatever it is that you've taken that oath to do, you've lied.
Mrs. Lindblom, I can only laugh at you because you can't show one positive thing that you've ever done in this community, and you've been on my back for all these years. And I guess I could repeat what I said. You can call a pretty girl ugly, and she's just going to smile at you.
Mr. Baker. For the record, Mrs. Lindblom has been involved with the Pennsbury Scholarship
I know she is, and she hasn't accomplished one thing.
for many, many, many years, raising money for children to go to college. So,
Oh, boy.
Mr. Baker, please go ahead.
Bob Baker from Fallsington. I have a question about Lower Marsville Road. Is that is PennDOT's responsibility?
State road, yes.
Okay. Is there any way the township manager or somebody from Falls Township can get the state to fix that road? I don't know if you noticed after the last storm, the water runoff on there, there was mud, stones all over the one area of it, plus up near the gift shop.
Right.
The road is eroding.
Yeah.
It's being undermined. Is there some way that the township can get involved with that?
Mr. Gray is writing down notes right now. He'll be making a call to PennDOT tomorrow.
Okay, because it's getting to be a safety issue.
Yeah.
Because the road is starting to get narrow and with the mud on it. Matter of fact, the other day I slid a little bit, and I was only going about 25 miles an hour, but it's it's getting dangerous. So.
It's too narrow.
Thank you.
And I would favor redoing that road. That would be a lot better for the public than a boat ramp.
Oh, definitely. Well, I don't know about that, but it definitely needs to be improved.
Something.
Yep,
Yeah.
we could do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? See no hands. All right. Move on with the minutes. We have two sets of minutes at our last meeting because it was back-to-back weeks. We did not have, Mrs. Pullen did not have time to put together the minutes from the previous meeting. So
There's
we'll
one
start
meeting
off
dated wrong.
with April 5th, I don't believe so.
Did you check? Did we not change the night to a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday? Someone complained to me about it.
It was the 12th.
Let's check here.
The agenda said it, but
5th and 12th, right? Two Tuesdays, right? Okay, yeah, that's
back-to-back
correct.
Tuesdays.
Okay, so we're looking at April 5th, 2011. We'll start with that one. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupka?
we changed the meeting.
Mrs. Vislowski?
What?
Comments or questions regarding the April 5th minutes?
Nope, I have none. I'm going to vote no on them. I read them.
Okay. Mr. Snipes?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents? And I have none. There's no public comment necessary. Is motion to approve the minutes as presented for April 5th, 2011?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, minutes for April 12th, 2011. Comments or questions? Mr. Zupka?
None.
Mrs. Vislowski?
None?
Mr. Snipes?
No, excellent minutes as usual.
No. Mr. Dents?
No.
And I don't have any either. Thank you for doing the double duty here, Mrs. Pullen. Is there a motion to accept the April 12th minutes as presented?
Yes, so moved.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. Executive session, I don't think we have a need for an executive session. All right, manager comment. Mr. Gray, you're up.
Yes, just two items tonight, Mr. Chairman. The first item I have is a contract for the sale of a police dog between Officer James McCafferty and Falls Township. Officer McCafferty agrees to transfer and deliver to the township on or before, actually probably right after this evening, a police dog known as Thor. The township agrees to pay the sum of $1 for the police dog in full upon receipt. Upon receipt of the dog known as Thor, the township agrees to assume all liability related to the police dog. This includes, but is not limited to, general liability insurance and veterinary expense. With the addition of this one dog, this would add to our total police dogs a total of 4 dogs. The township is asked to consider this agreement between Officer McCafferty and the township.
Okay. Mr. Clark, just give us an idea here. Yeah, Mr. Officer McCafferty, when he moved from Warminster, right? Warminster? Yeah.
Warminster.
He already had the dog there. He actually purchased the dog from Warminster with his own money and now is bringing the dog with him as he's coming here as an officer. What's the reason for us purchasing the dog?
When we purchased the dog, then all monetary issues related to the dog now become the responsibility of the township. The care and maintenance of the dog, the veterinary bills, all become the responsibility of the township. But perhaps more importantly any potential liability that may flow from any of the actions of the dog will now be covered by our insurance policy, which is probably a little bit more than Officer McCaffrey carries. So it's just a way of protecting him if there is ever an incident involving the dog.
Okay. All right. And the dog, obviously, we've Chief Wilcox, I know, has worked on this already, but the dog meets all the requirements we have, and the dog is a dog that does get along with the canines we already have, which was sort of an important issue. And the dog actually has some capabilities that ours don't have, I believe. Anyway, I'm not sure of that. I think I remember talking to Officer McCaffrey about that at some point. So, and it's not very old, I don't think. I don't think the dog's very old, a couple of years old.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years old, I believe.
Yeah, so obviously we're getting a dog with full lifetime, basically.
Did we have it appraised or anything?
Are we purchasing the dog?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
For how much?
$1.
$1.
Let me say then we owe a thank you to Officer McCaffrey, who is a former police officer and was just sworn in within the last month. And he's a wonderful police officer, very fine young man. And the people at home who might be listening and who shopped on Stony Hill Road at the McCaffrey supermarket that was destroyed, he's from that family. And when he left, it was shortly after his mother passed away. And he went home because he felt that his father needed him. And he's back, and Falls Township is much the better for it. I'm very proud of our police department, and he's the kind of a reason that we all should be proud. So thank you, Officer McCaffrey.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Okay, is there a motion then to approve the contract for the sale of a police dog for the sum of $1?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Ms. Pullen, can you take the roll?
Mr. Zepka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wysocki?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Just a few announcements from the Park and Rec Department. The Park and Rec continues to accept Pondwood Pool membership applications as well as summer camp registrations. The annual fishing derby event will be held on Saturday, June 4th. This event will be held at the Falls Township Community Park near the boat ramp. You can register in advance by stopping at the Township Building or Bart's Tackle Shop, or you can sign up on the morning of the event at the park at 7 a.m. Fishing derby starts promptly at 8 a.m., and this is a free event. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to board comment. Mr. Dents, we'll start with you.
I have no comment tonight.
Okay. Mrs. Kozlowski, comments or questions? Or
Why don't you call someone else and call me last for a change?
Mrs. Kozlowski, this is your time to speak if
No,
you'd like to speak.
I don't have to speak if I don't want to.
It's fine.
You can call it. I'm passing.
Mr. Zupko.
There is such a legal thing as passing. You'll have to let me speak tonight.
Mr. Zupko?
The events in the world in the past couple days, just very, to me, very moving. And one person, one of the first people I thought of when I heard the news was someone from our own area, that Nate the Temple, and he was doing what his family was very proud of, and he died in the armed forces, and just with everything that's happened, frankly, I think of a lot of people that have, because of what happened on 9/11, aren't here anymore, and it's time to reflect on some of this. But I think it's something that Winston Churchill said was, this really isn't the end. This is the beginning of the end, and it just shows, we will stick to it, and we will come out. I'm going to say we will come out on top of everything that's happened to us, and we just have to go on from there. So that's about it. Have a good evening.
Okay, Mr. Snipes?
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Couple things I have. taking a look at the agenda or the calendar, as is typical for the Board of Supervisors. The second meeting in May, usually, in fact always, I think, falls on Election Day. And as is the custom here at the board, we move that meeting typically to the following day, which would be Wednesday, the 18th. If that's agreeable, it's usually what we do, and it's been done that way since even before I got here. So if there are no objections, that's what we can go ahead and do that. Let's see. An announcement here from the Levittown Fire Company. Okay, this is, they're doing a murder mystery on Friday, May 13th.
Excuse me, is that a change date? Is it official?
Well, if there's no objection to it, then yes, the date's official.
Well, you didn't ask for it.
You're gonna need to vote on it.
Sorry.
Because we
Okay.
vote on our meetings earlier in the year.
Right, I apologize. All right, is there a motion then to move the next meeting to May 18th, Wednesday?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Again, the Levittown Fire Company at Colonial Hall on Friday, May 13th is doing a murder mystery. It's called Mummy Dearest. Let's see. It's this 6:30 to 11 o'clock. The show starts at 7 p.m. $30 ticket includes, it's a pretty good spread here. Stuffed chicken, roast beef, scalloped potatoes, vegetables, salad, cheesecake, coffee, tea, soda, beer, wine and drinks available for purchase. For tickets or more information, you can call a few numbers here. And what we'll do, and rather than read these out, because I can never get the numbers when I hear them read out. So this, I think they did ask if this could be put onto the website, Mr. Gray. And so we'll do that. So I ask people to check the website and also, I'm sorry, Channel 22, to check those two locations for more information. Again, Friday, May 13th, a murder mystery at Colonial Hall, Levittown Fire Company number 1, from 6:30 to 11:30, and the show starts at 7. Okay, and the tickets again are $30. And that includes dinner and drinks and things of that nature. Most drinks. Okay, and finally, looking at again the calendar as we're coming up. This Sunday is Mother's Day, and was a day officially designated by Congress, I believe, almost 100 years ago, to recognize the contributions of the mothers of the country. And I'm going to ask everybody out there, hopefully, I know it's always a big travel day, it's always a big day for phone lines being jammed and that kind of thing. So wish a very happy Mother's Day to everybody out there in our township and everywhere else who is a mother or a grandmother or a mother-to-be, and wish you a happy Mother's Day to my wife and mother and mother-in-law, who my wife doesn't watch these meetings, understandably, but my mother-in-law sometimes does. My mother does as well. So wish a happy Mother's Day to them. Okay. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
No, I'll take my turn now. You don't have a right to cut me off, Mr. Harvey. You're flirting with legal problems.
I asked you if you had...
You're flirting with legal problems. I'm questioning the...
I asked you if you had time.
I'll be glad to be quiet while you interrupt me.
You didn't want to speak.
I didn't say I didn't want to speak. I said I passed, and that is a legal way. I wasn't prepared to speak.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Don't tempt me. Sure, because Snipes sees that I've got all his properties here. Yeah.